Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Sam walked sluggishly home. He already knew that he was going to be punished by his father. The boy was angry not so much at his father William, who would punish him, but at his sister Nancy, who had told his father everything. And the thing is, Sam's dad fixed the old tape recorder, and he was very proud of it. William kept his rarity in his shed, which he used as a workshop. The man forbade the children to enter the building in his absence. However, as they say, forbidden fruit is sweet, and Sam and Nancy. And when Dad was fishing, secretly went into the workshop. The boy was more interested in hooks for swimming trunks, but Nancy wanted to listen to the tape recorder. She asked her brother to help her turn it on. Sam complied with the request. A song came on, but after a few minutes the sound became disgusting. Nancy, 9 years old, capriciously said to her brother Sam. Sam had already picked up his fishing gear and wanted to run to his friend Ben's house sooner to go to the lake. But his sister wouldn't let him go and begged him to help fix the tape recorder. Sam realized that he could not get rid of Nancy just like that and suggested to her that you can fix the tape recorder yourself. And after this phrase, the boy explained what parts should be greased in the tape recorder. Nancy, hearing her brother's words, agreed, nodded, and clapped her hands joyfully. Sam looked at his sister with a smirk and added, just be careful not to overdo it with the oil. And don't stay here too long so that your father doesn't catch you here or you'll be full of mushrooms. Well, I'm out of here. Ben's already raising me. And after that, the 14-year-old boy jumped out of the barn and ran to his friend's house. Sam hoped that his sister would be out before his father got there, but the opposite happened. The guy and Ben had already been sitting at the lake for about 2 hours when he saw Nancy walking towards them. Sam immediately suspected something wrong and shouted to her, "What's wrong? Is your father waiting for you at home?" "Why?" asked the teenager tensely. "He came in earlier than usual today and found me in the barn. I was just turning on the tape recorder. Dad got angry and asked me if you were here. And I said yes, you could have kept me here. Why did he come home so early? I didn't ask him that." And now Sam was walking home, realizing what he was about to get from his father. Only the teenager entered the courtyard, followed by his sister, as William raised his eyebrows at the sea of questions about who allowed him to enter the workshop in his absence. Sam quietly replied that no one had. And then the father asked a completely unexpected question to the teenager. "How did you advise your sister to fix the tape recorder?" The boy looked perplexed at his father and told William listen to his son, and then threateningly said that advice should be given wisely. And as it turned out, Nancy lubricated the tape recorder, but only with butter. Sam glanced glumly at her sister. She saw her brother's angry look and said tearfully, "But you didn't tell me what kind of oil to use." "My father explained to me later that in these cases they use machine oil." After this incident, William gave the boy a few slaps and forbade the party for 3 days. Nancy, on the other hand, received no punishment. Her father explained that she was not at fault in this case, as she was still young and acting on the orders of her older brother. And it happened often that Sam received more from her father than Nancy. Soon the summer was over and it was school time. Brother and sister started school. Sam often teased Nancy, for which he often received from his father. The boy was angry at his sister. What was she? "I poor Dad and thought all the time how to get back at her. And then he got his chance. Nancy was to have a race for a certain distance, and she and her friend wanted to win in this event." The girl turned to her brother to think of a way to do it. Sam thought for a while and then told his sister there was only one way to finish first. To do that, before the race, put red pepper between your buttocks. But make sure you don't start the race before the signal. Don't tell anyone about my advice, or you'll be the first to finish. The day after the race, Sam was summoned to the school principal's office with his father. As it turned out, Nancy shared this advice with her friend, and the two of them used Sam's method. The girls won the race, but after the finish line they ran around the school for a few more laps. Nancy did not tell her mom and dad about her brother's advice, but her friend informed her parents, who immediately reacted and appealed to the principal of the school. And naturally, after another incident, Sam received a beating from his father. And as always, the punishment in the form of a ban on walking for several days. The guy after this case gave himself a vow that he would no longer tease his sister. Time passed, but Sam still occasionally teased Nancy, for which of course received. And yet he found a way to wean his sister off. My poor father, when the teenager once again teased Nancy. And she complained to Dad that the guy early in the morning before school to blow his nose in the school uniform of his sister. Sam immediately informed the girl that he would do so every time Nancy wanted to inform her father about his pranks. And Nancy just tolerated all of her older brother's antics after that. Sam teased his sister until he turned 16. And as soon as the teenager celebrated his birthday, it was as if he was replaced. The guy began to carefully monitor his appearance. This was noticed even by his father, who casually said to his son, "You just as if you want to become the first guy in the village. You must have fallen in love that you are always hanging around the mirror." Sam only wanted to answer his father, but then Nancy appeared, who heard his father's words and reacted immediately. The girl said in a sarcastic tone, "Sam wants to show off to the new teacher who told him that he is growing up handsome." The years flew by imperceptibly, and soon Sam graduated from school. The young man already knew very well that he had a handsome appearance, as he had been told about it many times by his mother's acquaintances, as well as by girls from the village. Sam's friend, when he heard compliments in his friend's direction, wrinkled his nose in displeasure and said, "You're lucky you have good looks. You can finish any king. I'm not interested in that. I want to live large, and I'm not in danger of it, because now I'll go to college, get a profession, and earn little. Is that a life? I want to ride on a yacht, go to restaurants, travel abroad." Oh, where are you going?" Benjamin said with a laugh. "A normal dream for a good-looking guy. Maybe you want to twist the tails of cows in the countryside. I don't like that kind of work. Don't get all hot and bothered. If you want to live a nice life, you've got a chance. I'll use my looks and seduce a rich girl. And then you'll live a good life. I'll have to think about your proposal, but it won't work. I don't intend to get married and have screaming children who need diapers changed every half hour." Soon Sam entered college in the city, and from the village the boy left with a light heart. It was only difficult for him to part with his sister, over whom at one time he often stirred. The young man, though, joked about Nancy, but loved her very much, and if anyone offended her, he always stood up for her. Time flew by, and Sam graduated from college. The young man did not want to return home, as he did not see any prospects there. So he stayed in the city, rented a room for two with a student, and after that he got a job at the factory as a fitter. As soon as the guy worked for a week, he called his sister and told her how he was doing at the moment, and asked Nancy to tell his news to his parents. The girl promised to let her mom and dad know everything. She then inquired how he was doing on the personal front. Sam laughed and said that, like in the village, there were girls running after him in droves. Nancy smiled in return and said, "I didn't expect any other answer. You're a handsome boy, but be careful with your nighttime activities, or you'll be a father of many children at your age. It's too early for me to try on the role of a father," he said with a laugh, and immediately asked his sister if she had a boyfriend. Nancy indignantly replied that she was being courted by a young man, but that she was still thinking about it. After working for 6 years, Sam sighed doubtfully, for in that time he had not been able to save even $200. And all because of the fact that it was necessary to pay utilities, rent a room, as well as to eat and travel to work. And at the same time wanted to go to a nightclub to have fun. In this regard, Ben's suggestion popped up on the young man's mind that it was possible to take advantage of his appearance and charm a rich girl who would pay for his whims. Sam saw nothing objectionable in this. After all, he was not going to steal from anyone. The guy made a decision, and all he had to do was to find a girl from a wealthy family. He decided to find a rich person in a nightclub. Sam thought that such a contingent most often hangs out there, and the next day in the evening, the young man went to such an establishment. Sam took a not strong cocktail and stood at the counter. The guy looked closely at the fair sex, as well as what they were wearing and how they behaved. He thought that if a girl was from a rich family, She should be in a strong outfit and behave relaxed. And at one point, he was attracted to such a person. The girl was dressed in a golden top leather black skirt. With 2 slits on the sides, she danced with a friend, holding in one hand a flute with a cocktail. The girl laughed casually. Guys often approached her, but she immediately opened them with a glance. Sam decided to try his hand at courtship and approached the stranger. The guy raised his glass to the top and, trying to shout over the music, said that he was raising a flute to the pristine beauty. The girl looked at him with interest, but immediately asked him to back off. The young man inwardly traits, but did not back off and said, "I understand that damn beautiful young ladies so and should behave towards you himself. And if for a moment to imagine that I am not from this contingent and give me a chance to interchange with you a couple of phrases, I'm interested. Besides, you're cute too. What do you want to get me a drink? Actually, I'm used to being served by the ladies. But in this case, let's make an exception. Let's go to the bar and choose. Are you a ladies' man?" The stranger said with surprise. Sam realized that he had said something stupid. He quickly realized that it was necessary to save the situation. Therefore, the first thing that came to mind said to the interlocutor, "Why so rude? I just have a high demand from the fair sex. Sometimes I'd even have to fight back. Now I see you are Naburiotsia Price." With a laugh said the girl, and then added, "How cocky are you? Come on, let's go to the bar." Soon the couple stood near the bar and sipped a cocktail. They chatted casually. Sam learned that the girl's name is Lily. She's 19 years old, studying at university. Her father is a big official and her mom is an entrepreneur. The young man, having learned the details of the internal, was jubilant that he made the right choice when he approached the girl. Then the couple danced and, already for 0 o'clock, left the night establishment. The young people went outside and the girl headed for a foreign car. The guy remained standing in place. Lily turned around and asked why he was frozen like a statue. Sam said he was uncomfortable with the girl driving the car by herself. Lily laughed and said, "Do you know how to drive? Then get in the driver's seat and I will show you where to go." Soon the young people arrived at the given address. The couple walked into the 2-room apartment they had previously owned. Sam immediately assessed the surroundings. He mentally instructed himself that it was necessary to please this girl this night so that she would want to meet again. And there the guy decided that he would figure out how to manipulate her. Sam's plan succeeded. The next morning when he woke up, there was a cup of coffee and a plate of fat in front of him. The girl sat next to it and looked at him adoringly. The man sipped the flavored drink and immediately heard you were inimitable. "Let's spend the whole day together, drive around the city, go to decent cafes, and then come back to my place. Your offer is tempting, but I can't afford the pleasures of life. You know that. Who told you you'd be paying? I'm the one who proposes it, so I'm the one who finances it." Lily said with a smile, "Maybe you'll give me some cash. It's a bit awkward having a girl pay for you, isn't it? I like the way you think. We'll go to an ATM. I'll withdraw the money, and you'll pay for all the services yourself." After that day, Sam started seeing the girl a lot. They'd been dating for a little over 2 months. Lily gave money to the guy, but it was small amounts. And all because of the fact that the girl was financially dependent on her parents' money. Sam didn't like that. He wanted the mistress to be independent of others, and her money was managed by herself. That is why the young man decided to part with Lily. When they met again, he told her about it, which caused a flurry of emotions. And then the unexpected statement of the girl, "You cannot leave me, as I am pregnant by you." That's a lie. What's the point of me lying to you? So you have to terminate the pregnancy because I'm not going to be a father. If you go against my will and have a baby, you won't get much since I have a small salary. The young man said stiffly and left the apartment. Later he found out that Lily had lied about the baby. She just wanted to keep the guy close to her. However, after such a statement, Sam concluded for himself that in the future it is necessary to use contraception. Now that the guy realized what kind of girl he needed, he decided that it was necessary to look for her not in a nightclub, but through a marriage agency. And soon he already had enough applicants. He chose a prettier woman who was 34 years old. After a while, the man sat with the girl in a cafe and had a nice conversation. He actually liked her. It was a slender brunette with refined facial features. Her name was Betty. From the girl, the young man learned that she is an entrepreneur, has her own boutique, lives in a 2-room apartment in a dormitory district. She has a Chevrolet automobile. Betty asked the young man to tell her about himself. The young man did not make up anything about himself and told it like it is. His biography. The woman after his story looked at him thoughtfully, and then said, "And why are you so handsome? And do not get acquainted with peers. With them is not interesting. I am more attracted to women who are wise and like to talk to them. There's something to talk about and it's nice to enjoy. What about you? I see you're a frank young man. Well, let's try to meet you. Maybe we can make the perfect family." The couple started dating. Betty was good with Sam. He could turn an ordinary day into a holiday. With his noble character, the man also enjoyed socializing with the woman, and he often teased her like he used to tease his sister. Betty took no offense at Sam for this, until a certain point. It was when the couple was already dating. For the 3rd month, Betty was at work, as the downstairs neighbor called and said that she was being flooded from her apartment. The woman immediately closed her store and hurried home, calling the plumber in advance to come. Betty entered the apartment and hurried to the bathroom, but there was no water running. She went to the kitchen, but it was dry there too. The woman shrugged her shoulders perplexedly and wanted to go to her neighbor to find out why she had deceived her. But then Sam came out of the room to her and said, "See how great I've made your day off. I should call and tell her you're flooding the neighbor. How are you already here? Do you realize what you're doing? I called the plumber, and now I'm gonna have to pay for a false alarm. I got ripped out of work on a Sunday when it's busiest, which means at this time I'll lose the opportunity to sell something and therefore no income. I don't understand how a neighbor could go along with your scam and call me and collect it. What's there to understand?" With a smile said the guy and continued, "Money makes everything. I paid my neighbor to make that call. You're laughing. I give you money and you spend it recklessly. You're your own beggar's brood. And in a way, I'm even supporting you. Maybe you think there's no substitute for you. Then you're sorely mistaken. Whoa, you're gonna insult me now. Look, I can leave. Good riddance. You weren't gonna start a family with me anyway." After saying that, Sam spit over his shoulder, threw the keys to the apartment and left. The man thought that Betty would cool down after a while and call. But that didn't happen. The young man would have called himself, but he was stopped by Betty for insults. Sam feared that the woman could call him a beggar one more time, and he would not be able to hold back. After the unsuccessful affair with Betty, a couple of months passed, and Sam reapplied to the marriage office. But now the guy decided for himself that it is necessary to look for a woman who does not shine beauty, and come up with a legend that she gave a large sum, and after receiving the finances simply evaporate from her life. Sam soon selected a candidate named Emily. He met the woman in a cafe. As in the first case, the young man tried to be with Emily, courteous while skillfully giving her compliments. In conversation with the woman, he learned that she was 36 years old. She owns an atelier, lives Emily, in a 2-bedroom apartment, has a car, and she has a 9-year-old son growing up. Sam told a legend about himself that he's in the construction business. He has a brigade, although in fact he continued to work at the factory, lives in another city, and here he rents a room. And also the man told the interlocutor that he loves classical music. Sam specifically said this, as he read in the woman's profile that she was partial to this genre. When the man said about his hobby, Emily looked at the young man with interest, which did not escape the interlocutor. They spent the first 2 weeks just spending time talking about various topics. And soon Emily offered Sam to stay overnight at her place. The man was not excited about the relationship with this woman, but he stubbornly went to his goal to get money from her. And what annoyed the guys the most was that he had to listen to classical music, which he hadn't liked since childhood. It had been more than 2 weeks since Sam had taken up residence at Emily's place, and he decided it was time to act or else. When the woman once again turned on classical music under the night's entertainment, he would just break all the discs. The man came to Emily in a tortured state. The woman immediately noticed that the lover was not in the mood. She asked what had happened. The young man began to ask the landlady not to worry about him. However, Emily saw that the man was eating something, and the woman persistently asked her lover what happened. "I have a little problem at work, but I do not want to burden you with them. You have enough worries of your own. Spit it out. How do you not realize that your problems, they become my problems too? Or are you saying that when you talked about living together, it was just words? How could you think I was lying to you? Of course I love you. I just wanted to keep you out of trouble. But if you insist, I'll tell you. Anyway, I had a little hiccup at work, and I pay my workers at the end of every week. And right now I don't have any money, and I need a lot. It's not much, but it's a lot. We're not hackers," the man said, and then voiced how much money is needed. Emily thought for a moment, and then smiled softly and said, "It's not that much. I will give you the money, but only in a couple of days. Now just smile and don't be sad about it anymore." "Thank you, my sonny," smiled, said Sam, and kissed the woman gently on the lips. And to himself mentally damned that he asked for too small an amount. 2 days later, Emily brought the money to her lover. The man thanked the woman and thought that tomorrow his torment would be over, because he would no longer return to this apartment and would not hear this hateful classical music, from which he was already sick. Sam said goodbye to Emily the next day as usual. He said that he would be home at the proper time in the evening, and then he discreetly gathered his things and slipped out of the apartment. Then he bought a new SM card and vanished from Emily's life forever. In the shower after leaving the woman, the man wished her mentally that she would meet a decent man who would listen to classical music with her. The money he had gotten was enough to live at his pleasure for 3 months. Now the young man thought that it was necessary to save up as much money as possible in order to open his own business in the future. Sam did not yet know exactly what kind of business he wanted to have, but he decided for himself that he would definitely become an entrepreneur. When the money ran out, Sam wanted to go to the same marriage office again. But then he realized that it was not worth it. He didn't even realize why he decided that, and now the man was on his way to another agency. Sam just wanted to stop by the agency. How did his cell phone ring? It was the sister. The guy answered and immediately heard the happy voice of Nancy. "Hey, little brother, I'm getting married in a month. I look forward to your congratulations. Is your beau ripe to propose?" "That's right. He came yesterday to ask me to marry him. So my sister will soon be wearing a wedding ring on her fingers. And congratulations. I'll be owed a tidy sum by the day of the wedding. And you're still living off women. Why don't you stop doing that? It's not going to end well. Nancy, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. All right, I'll call you later. They're waiting for me at the office." And after that, the man disconnected the connection. And at the same moment, he thought that he was in time to express his desire to visit the marriage office again. After all, his sister must be given the money. Soon Sam was already sitting in the cafe again and got acquainted with another woman, whose name was Vanessa. The man told about the fact that he worked in a construction company and that he was a vegetarian. Sam also learned about this from the woman's profile after his story. Sam invited the interviewee to inform him about herself. The woman smiled and then looked at him with a rather frank look, as if undressing the man, and told him her biography. She said that she was 35 years old, worked as a storekeeper, and had a store selling cosmetics. She lives in a 2-room apartment, where in addition to her 2 parrots live. The woman also said that she has been married twice, but life didn't work out. Sam noticed the look with which the woman examined him at the meeting and immediately realized that this lady had not been in bed with a man for a long time. This fact pleased Sam, as it meant that the candy bouquet relationship would not last long. When Sam listened to Vanessa, he immediately realized that he had not heard from her whether she had a car, so he asked her about it under a plausible pretext. The woman smiled and said, "I have a car, but I don't drive. The car has been in the garage for about 5 years. The thing is that my second husband and I were in an accident. And ever since then, I've been afraid to drive myself. That's okay. You'll get over it with me, and I think you will. But maybe we'll switch to you so it is more interesting to communicate," said the smart woman and threw a leg over a leg. "As you say, my queen." And on the same day, Vanessa invited Sam to her home. The man found himself at the woman's apartment, exulted that it was so easy to charm this person. In the meantime, Vanessa offered to pass to the young man in the hall and settle down as at home. What Sam did. After a while, entered the living room and the owner of the apartment, who had changed into a short silk robe of azure color. The woman was holding a tray with a bottle of wine, a couple of glasses, and a vase with various fruits. When the man saw all this, he hurried to help Vanessa carry it to the coffee table. The couple then took a seat in the armchair that faced each other. Sam looked at the woman, and once again it hit him. The thought that there would be a lot of money to be made out of this very spectacle, but it was only necessary to act wisely. And with these thoughts, he filled his glasses and made a toast. To our future together. And to himself, he wished himself a speedy and successful completion of the scam. A few days went by when Sam moved in with Vanessa. He had no idea that this woman was so insatiable in bed. It seemed to him that she was squeezing all the juices out of him. The man couldn't say it didn't suit him. He loved it, loved being with Vanessa, but annoying and different. Namely, that he had to physically work hard at his job and then at night fulfill his manly duties without eating any meat. Sam realized that in this way he would soon die. That's why right after the factory he started to go to Cafes, where he bought himself a meat-calorie dish. Time moved imperceptibly, and his sister's wedding day was approaching. Sam realized that it was time to act further, and he decided to continue in the same spirit as it was last time. The man, as always, came home from work in a dejected state. He tried not to speak much verbally to Vanessa. And naturally, the woman became alarmed and began to question him. Sam at first denied and said that everything was fine, but then he confessed that there was not enough money to pay the workers' wages. The woman recognized the man's amount and said that she had some savings, but it would not be enough to cover the wages. Sam replied that it would be possible to give at least some money to the workers, and then he would make it on his own. The man promised that he would pay back all the money soon. Vanessa withdrew the money and gave it to her lover. Sam thanked the woman and said that he had to go home for a few days, as his mother was ill. Vanessa sympathized with her lover and wished her mother a speedy recovery before leaving. Sam soon left for home, but only not to check up on his mother, as she was short, but to get to his sister's wedding. And here he is already in the registry office and watches Nancy exchanging wedding rings with the groom. And then the guests and relatives give a friendly shout to the newlyweds, bitterly and bitterly. Then everyone goes to the cafe, where the feast begins and the celebration is in full swing. The toastmaster announces that it is necessary to congratulate the young. Guests and relatives begin to put envelopes with money on the tray. When the turn comes to Sam, he rises and says, "I do not know how to say beautiful words in such cases, but I would like you to use the contents of this envelope to go to a resort and have a good vacation." The man then places a rather impressive envelope on the tray and then takes a seat at the table. On the second day of the wedding, the sister discreetly approaches her brother and asks him to step aside with her. She whisperingly asks him if he robbed a bank. The man laughs and replies that he didn't. Nancy embarrassedly says that he gave so much money that he could go to the sea and buy a dishwasher to top it off. Sam hugs his sister and wishes her nothing but happiness in her married life. The next day, the man leaves the village and goes to Vanessa in the city. He brought some goodies from home to treat the woman and let her know that he really went to see his mother. Vanessa is happy to meet her lover and passionately whispers in his ear that she missed him tremendously. It was more than 2 months before Sam started living with Vanessa. The man realized that it was time to act further, but he could not think of a strategy to borrow money from the landlady. But he was helped in this by the woman herself, with an unexpected question: "Dear, how are you doing in the construction company?" "Not bad." "Why do you ask?" "Because you borrowed money from me to pay the workers' salaries. So I thought if you're doing well, I could pay you back. I'm just saying that because you can put the money back in the bank for interest. It makes sense. You're right. I'm such a fool for borrowing money and not paying it back. And you probably think I'm a fraud now because of that, don't you? I didn't think so. Now I feel guilty for asking. Stop saying that. I just think you and I need to expand our business. Maybe I should take out a loan to start a second construction firm. And then you and I can go on our honeymoon to the coast. I have another suggestion. Why pay extra interest when you can sell my car, which is worthless? You've got your money's worth, and we'll get you an expensive car. You got a point. Then maybe you wait with the money I'd borrowed from you. They're just in circulation. But if you want, I can pull it out at any time. You don't have to pay me back in this case. We just decided that we're going to move on in terms of material resources. Soon Vanessa sold the car and handed the money over to Sam. The man, as usual, thanked the woman, and after 3 days he retreated from her apartment. When he left the house, he looked back at the windows of the second floor, where he lived for several months, and mentally wished Vanessa to find a worthy life partner and be happy with him. It was only after that that Sam went on with ease. This time Sam kept a small amount of the proceeds from the sale of the car to live on. The rest of his finances he put under interest. The man knew that he needed to save up a certain amount of money so that he could start his own business. A couple of months passed and Sam went to the marriage agency again. And again he met a woman. Courtship, and then a short stay. After the legend that there is not enough money to pay his salary and, as a consequence, to get money. True, this time the man did not get as much money as in the case of Vanessa. After some time, Sam visited the marriage agency again, and again he had good luck. Sam was happy that everything was going so smoothly for him, and he was going towards his goal. The man realized that he would not live like this all the time, that he was doing this for the sake of achieving his goal. But at the same time, Sam somewhere in the depths of his soul dreamed of meeting the one and only one with whom he would like to connect his life and go through all the joys and sorrows with her. However, for so many years, no woman really touched his heart, and sometimes the man wondered if maybe he wasn't meant to truly know love. A few months had passed since his last relationship with a woman. Sam was on his way to his rented room after work when his sister called him. The man happily answered and immediately asked how she was doing. Nancy at the same moment interrupted her brother and created everything as fine. I am even doing wonderfully well. I can congratulate you as you will soon become an uncle. I'm pregnant. Can you believe it? I'm gonna be a mom. That's news. Sam said in a confused voice in response. I knew you'd be happy about it. You're going to be my godfather after a while. So try to find a bride by the time the baby is born so that my baby will have a godmother. After talking to his sister, Sam thought about it. The man involuntarily invited Nancy that she had arranged her personal life, and there was a loved one beside her. But at the same moment, he pushed these thoughts away from himself and began to think that it was time to continue the work he had started and go to the intended goal. The man soon went again to the marriage office, but only this time he reapplied to the agency, where he had previously chosen Vanessa. He thought that in that marriage office is more promising to find a rich bride, which can be easily divorced for a decent amount. And now the young man is already sitting in the office, choosing a candidate. As soon as he picked up a woman, he immediately set a date with her. However, this time Sam's scheme failed, because on the second date with the woman, whose name was Valentina, he was arrested for fraudulent actions. The man denied the charges against him. Investigator Trevor listened with a chuckle as Sam asked for evidence from the man in uniform. In response, he held out a picture of Emily and Vanessa to the detained man and pronounced these are just 2 women who have been affected by your fraudulent actions. But I think there are many more victims. These 2 citizens filed a police report, and after that, it was easy to track you down. So I suggest you now make a clean confession of all your deeds and go on with a clear conscience. But I didn't do anything wrong. I was looking for a woman to start a family with. But after living with these ladies for a while, I realized we weren't right for each other. So I left, and they offered me the money themselves as financial help. You believe yourself? You're talking nonsense right now. To begin with, you reminded these women that you work in a construction company and you need to pay your employees. That's the same story you told your new friend Wendy, who almost victimized you. I suggest you come clean, not play the groom. Believe me, we will find other women who have been victimized by your fraudulent schemes. All right, I'll tell you. "Tell me, will I get much for this?" Sam asked me shakily. "I'm not a judge to pronounce a sentence. All I can tell you is that you'll get a fine. In any case, a prison sentence, as the court decides. But I didn't do anything to get locked up. Yes, I've lived with women whom I've given pleasure to, and they've wanted it. You have to admit, they weren't forced to date me. So why should I face jail time?" Sam said with fervor. "You still present yourself to me as a hero who committed crimes for the good of the people." "Let's not philosophize on this topic," said Trevor, and immediately, smiling, continued to say, "You must be a passionate lover." That one of the affected women made an ambiguous proposal. This is the first time in my practice, and I am, frankly, amazed. "What kind of proposal?" Sam said in a perplexed voice. "It's better that you find out from her. So this proposal will sound more convincing than from my words," said the investigator, and offered the glory to go with him. A few minutes later, Sam entered another office where Vanessa was sitting. Trevor told the woman that she had 15 minutes and that he would wait outside the door. The visitor nodded in agreement and thanked him. As soon as the investigator left the office, Vanessa immediately rushed to hug Sam. The man stared dumbfounded at the woman. He couldn't understand how this lady could hug him after all that had happened. Sam expected from Vanessa reproaches, insults, but not this. The young man pulled away from the embrace and politely said, "I'm embarrassed in front of you. I deceived you. But let's get to the point. The investigator said you have something to offer me. I want you to tell me now." Vanessa looked affectionately at her lover and said that she was ready to withdraw her application if he would fulfill her request. And then the woman said that she wanted Sam to legalize the relationship with her and also to write a receipt that he would live with her forever. She would then take it to a notary together with him. Afterwards, the visitor added that if he agrees, he will probably be given a suspended sentence, and she would help to pay the fine. The man looked at Vanessa in bewilderment, and the latter looked at him with adoration. Sam didn't know what to say. And at that moment, the investigator came into the office. He said that time was up. The woman turned to her lover for an answer, and he categorically and unexpectedly said no way in hell. And after these words, the young man got up and went to the exit. And immediately he heard from Vanessa in reply, "But then don't expect any mercy. I'll ask that you get the full measure of it." As soon as Sam and the investigator left the corridor, Trevor turned to the man and asked why he had refused a lucrative offer. Sam turned to the man in uniform and, seeing a smile on his face, asked, "Are you kidding me?" "No, just curious." "Then you have no idea what it's like to work hard and then come home, eat vegetarian food, and then make love to a woman at night. But that's the way you chose to make your money. And as they say, every job has its flaws. It's been a while." Sam was waiting for his trial in the detention center, and then his sister came to check on him. She was crying and scolding her brother that he had jumped to his feet with his relationships with women. The man asked his sister not to worry and told her that he would not do it again. Nancy countered by taking him at his word that he would keep his word. Sam reluctantly promised his sister. He thought he would be given probation for his fraudulent actions. Soon the trial took place. The man's expectations were not met. Sam was sentenced by the judge for his deeds, fined and imprisoned for 1 year and 4 months. The man could not believe that he would have to spend so much time in confinement. Soon Sam was already serving his sentence. He often reflected on his life, analyzed where he had made mistakes, that he ended up behind barbed wire. And also the man dreamed that as soon as he was released, he would start a new life. After all, he promised it to his sister. Time flew by and Sam was released. His sister met him with her husband and baby. Sam, while still in prison, knew that Nancy had given birth to a baby girl who was named Kelly. So as soon as he stepped outside the prison gates, he first hugged his sister and then asked to hold his niece in his arms. Sam gently took the baby girl in his arms and looked at her face, and then said, "She's as beautiful as you are, Nancy. Now you and your husband need to think about making sure she has a protector. So start working on a baby brother for Kelly. Let your daughter grow up to at least 2 years old. "And then my husband and I will consider your proposal," Nancy said with a laugh, and immediately asked her brother what he was going to do next. Sam looked at his sister seriously and replied that he was going to live and earn an honest living. Nancy nodded contentedly and said that she loved him very much and welcomed his decision. After his release, Sam took a job as a laborer on a construction site, renting a room in advance. His sister gave him money for the first time. The man promised Nancy that he would soon pay her back. The young woman laughed in response and said that there was no need to do that, as the money was a gift to him for deciding to live like a human being. It has been 2 years since Sam was released. All this time, the man felt that he was living like a robot. He went to work after going straight home, where he cooked a meager dinner, which he consumed alone. And after eating, the man sat down in front of the TV and watched all the programs indiscriminately. Glory was often approached by women who worked at the construction site for this or that help. The man was well aware that they did this for a reason, but in order to capture his attention. However, Sam was indifferent to them, as no representative of the fair sex interested him. And if he met with girls, it was a short-term relationship. And from this circumstance, the man was also not easy on his soul, his outlet. There were only conversations with his sister on the phone. And here in one of the days when Sam came home after work, the cell phone rang. It was his sister calling. He gladly answered, and the first thing he did was to ask how she was doing. The young woman told him about her daughter and also about her parents. Then she added that she had news for him. Sam was intrigued, asked if the news was good. "You asked me once about your friend." "Well, he's in the village to visit his parents. He came by and asked how you were doing. Now your friend has become a rich man, and grandfather drives a foreign car so much. I wanted to give him your phone number, but then I thought, what if you don't want me to? You should have. I'd love to talk to him. It's an easy fix. I can see him through the window, walking down the street with his wife and kid. I can call him over and you two can talk. You want to? Go ahead." And within minutes, Sam was on the phone with his friend. They talked for a while. From Benjamin's words, the man learned that he had married a woman with a child, who was an entrepreneur. And now he and his wife had opened another store where Benjamin was already the boss. And also the friend added that soon they are expecting a child together, and that he is happy in life. After the conversation with Benjamin, Sam became upset. He remembered the conversation with his friend when they graduated from high school. After all, then the friend did not even dream about a good life. But Sam had dreamed of it. And now it turned out so that Benjamin lives happily, and he is satisfied with a meager salary and still has not settled his personal life. And yet he's approaching 35 years of age. The realization of this darkened the man's mood, and he decided to go to a cafe to unwind. Sam, not thinking long, got ready and left the apartment. The man walked down the street and kept thinking how lucky his friend was in life. He didn't notice that he had walked a few blocks. And then Sam saw a restaurant in front of him. Initially, he thought that he should not come here because the prices would be huge. And at the same moment, the man mentally scolded himself, saying not loudly, out loud, once a year, "I have the right to relax in an expensive restaurant." And with these words, he entered the establishment. The man ate dinner, and then, when the waiter came up with the bill, he was suddenly horrified when he saw the amount. Sam could hardly suppress a sigh of disappointment. He took out his wallet and counted out the required amount. And as soon as he left the restaurant, he regretted that he had entered this place at all. Sam came home in a disgusted mood. He still had a residue from the conversation with his friend. The man couldn't understand why Ben, who looked unattractive, had managed to settle down so well in life. But he himself, with his charming looks, can't find a well-off girl to love. And Sam was also nervous that today he had given a lot of money in a restaurant, and all because he wanted to feel like a rich man. Time slowly moved on and another year flew by unnoticed. Sam took a vacation and went to the village to visit his relatives. As soon as the man entered the house, he saw his mother crying. Sam frowned and asked what happened. The old woman said Kelly had fallen ill. She was admitted to the regional hospital. The doctors say she has something serious and will soon need an operation, which is better done in big cities. Nancy can't find a place to be. She roars like a beluga, day and night. Why didn't she call me and tell me about this? I thought you knew everything. Crying, the mother said. Where is Nancy now? She should be back from the hospital, the old woman said mournfully and cried again. The son hugged his mother and asked her not to worry, saying that he would think of a way to help his sister. Sam, after talking to his mother, went out into the yard. The man was angry at this point at his sister for not calling and telling him everything earlier. Sam was anxiously awaiting Nancy's return so that he could talk to her about his niece's illness. It was a little over half an hour later when the man saw his sister approaching the gate. Sam hurried over to Nancy and first asked the young woman why she had hidden about Kelly's illness. Nancy looked at her brother and immediately flooded with tears. Sam put his arms around his sister. His anger at the girl had already passed at that very moment. The man realized that if he himself was so worried about his niece, what state of mind was the mother in now, thinking about her child? Sam asked his sister to sit down on the bench and tell him everything. Nancy complied with her brother's request and consistently informed him about Kelly's illness. As soon as the man knew all the details, he hugged his sister and told her that they still had time to get money for the child's surgery. Nancy looked sadly at her brother and said, "My mother-in-law has given a small amount, and so have our parents. But these finances are like a drop in the ocean. My spouse tried to take a loan from the bank, but he was approved a small amount, not what he asked for. We are now waiting for the time to take this loan. Closer to the time the doctors will say the exact time as our little one will need surgeries. Well, that's good. A little bit of everything, and we'll raise the capital. But I will ask one thing of you, that you don't do this again. You've never hidden the fact that you're in trouble from your own brother. Do you understand me?" "Yes, thank you for your support," Nancy said quietly. All evening, Sam, after talking to his sister, sat in thoughtfulness. The man absent-mindedly answered his father's or mother's questions. He wondered where he could get money. Sam realized that if he took a loan from the bank, he would not be approved for a large sum either. He also realized that it was unrealistic to borrow such a large amount of money. And then he remembered the struggle. Sam immediately went to his sister to get the number of his friend from her. Nancy looked at her brother with surprise and said, "Ben is your buddy, not mine. And I don't have his number. Go to his parents and get his phone number there. Do you want to ask him for money? It doesn't matter. Thanks for the tip," the man said and quickly left the house. Soon Sam went to the parents of a friend, where he learned the number of the buddy, and without wasting time, the man immediately called Ben. Sam, in a nutshell, outlined the situation to the interlocutor and immediately asked to lend him a decent amount of money. When Benjamin heard how much he wanted, his friend even whistled and said, "Do you realize how much you are asking for? I can't lend you that much, as my wife, and I have all the money in circulation. And to be honest, even if I had finances, I wouldn't give you such a sum, because you wouldn't have anything to pay back later. Nancy tells me you're struggling to make ends meet. You're a friend, but don't take offense to what I said. Ben's not a friend, you're more after what you said. Friends don't do that. I'm even bitter that I turned to you. Go on living and enjoying life. I'll never bother you again. And I hope I will never see you again," he said, and immediately disconnected the connection. The man felt an unpleasant residue from his conversation with Benjamin. He forced himself not to think about this conversation, and his thoughts were directed to where he could get money. Sam went to his parents' house. His sister came up to him and asked if he had called a friend. The brother responded by lying that he hadn't gotten through. The man did not want to discuss with Nancy at the moment the conversation about Benjamin and his rejection. Sam walked to the kitchen, sat down at the table, and thought about it. He realized that money would not come into his pocket on its own, but finances were necessary. The man realized that he could get the money only in the way he used to do. That is, by seducing a woman and getting her to pay him a large sum of money. Sam remembered that he had given his sister his word not to engage in this business anymore. But now there was no other way out. And at the same moment, the man thought of another option how he could get a tidy sum of money and keep his promise to Nancy. Sam decided that he would seduce a rich woman and marry her, and thus in the future he would not be in the dock for a swindle and would always have money. The man rubbed his hands together with joy that he had found such a good option. He immediately decided that he would look for a future bride in the capital. Sam believed that there are more opportunities to find there and faster wealthy women. The next day, the man notified the household that he was leaving. He told his sister that he would definitely get her money within 2 months. Nancy looked at her brother suspiciously and asked him if he was thinking of scamming women for money again. Sam gently kissed his sister on the cheek and replied that he had no intention of doing so. Soon the man arrived in New York. He rented a room and then wondered where exactly to meet a rich suitor. Initially, Sam wanted to go to a dingy office, but something stopped him from that. And at the same moment, the man's stomach sounded strongly. He immediately felt incredibly hungry. On the man's mind came the decision that first it is necessary to eat, and already on a full stomach to act. Next, Sam did not delay the planned action and soon left the rented room and went outside. The man decided that today he would definitely visit a restaurant. Perhaps there he would get acquainted with a woman. And here Sam already sat at the table and dictated the order to the waiter in uniform. As soon as the man dictated the dishes, he began to look around the restaurant. Sam noted with admiration that everything here is decorated exquisitely and without unnecessary decorations, as is usually done in cheap cafes. A few minutes passed and the waiter brought part of the order, saying that the hot dishes would be ready a little later. Sam nodded in agreement and prepared to start tasting the exquisite appetizer. But then his attention was attracted by a lush lady who sat at the table opposite. The stranger was looking sadly out the window while mixing a straw in her glass. She was a full woman of about 50 years of age who was dressed in a coffee-colored pantsuit. Sam looked at the stranger and the woman, as if sensing the gaze, turned to the man and looked at him questioningly. Sam involuntarily caught himself thinking that this woman was quite unhappy and obviously lonely. And he also realized that this lady was not poor. This conclusion appeared to him intuitively. And Sam got up from the table and approached her, and then politely said, "I see you are bored. Maybe I could keep you company. If you don't mind, I don't know what to tell you. On the one hand, you're a man with a strong-willed face, but no wedding ring, which suggests certain thoughts. On the other hand, I'm really bored. I'm curious to know the first side of your definition that brings you to mind. I'll answer. You're an interesting man to pay attention to a bun pulling up a cocktail. You're more likely to be interested in being with a hottie who has legs growing out of her ears and to be half my age. You're an interesting person. I'll be honest. It's not your looks that attracted me to you, it's your demeanor. But if you don't want to socialize, I'll be right back. Or rather, back to my table. Interested, young man, join us, we'll talk. Just tell me what exactly you are interested in my behavior." The man sat down next to me. He mentally realized that this woman was obviously a rich lady, but now Sam didn't know how to talk to her. Sam hadn't come up with a cover story for himself and was therefore a little nervous about it. The man didn't know what to tell the woman about himself, so he decided to act according to the circumstances. Sam offered to tell the woman about himself. The woman grinned back and said carelessly, "You're fast. Do you really think that I will tell the first person I meet everything about myself? Maybe you should tell me at the first meeting what my annual income is? You have pleased me now with your words, namely that you called our sit-downs with you the first meeting. I conclude from this that we will have more meetings, and not one, and not even two. And you are also a self-confident type with a laugh," said the woman. "Maybe just a little. Let me start our dialogue differently. I would like to know your name and immediately suggest that we switch to the first name. It will be easier to talk that way. Well, we'll follow your plan. My name is Adriana. I'm 49 years old. I come here often because the food here is excellent. This is the first time I've seen your personality. Hence the conclusion that you're a stray pigeon. That's a pretty name you have. By the way, I want to say that you and shrewd madam, because I am actually a visiting pigeon here. I just got here today, decided to conquer New York. After losing business in my hometown," Sam said, and went on to tell the woman what his name was and how old he was. The woman listened attentively and then carelessly remarked that such a handsome man should definitely be married. Sam proudly took out his passport and held it out to the new acquaintance and said, "You can familiarize yourself with the document, where there is not a single stamp that I used to have the status of a married man." Adriana looked at the passport with interest, and then asked the interlocutor in surprise why he was not married. And then, without waiting for an answer, she said, "You don't have to answer that, as I have already guessed why you have never been married. You are obviously of a different orientation." Sam, hearing the words "new acquaintance," laughed and only after a while answered that his person does not attract the male sex at all. And then he added that he liked mature women with whom he could talk about various topics. Adriana, after these words, already looked at the man more interested, which did not hide from Sam. Then the couple started talking about New York. Sam tried to compliment her as often as possible under a plausible pretext. The woman heard beautiful words from the new acquaintance and tried not to react to them. But Sam saw perfectly well that she was pleased with these compliments. It took about 2 hours for the couple to communicate with each other. During this time, Sam learned that the interlocutor lives in a 3-room apartment, has a dacha in the Moscow region and a car. The owner of the travel agency was married. But life did not go well, and she and her husband separated. There is a child, a son, who is currently studying abroad. Sam listened to all this information carefully, and he was satisfied that he had sat down with this woman. The man realized that Adriana, like no one else, was very suitable for the role of a wife. And now Sam was thinking how to charm this lady even more. Meanwhile, the woman called the waiter and asked him to bring the bill. Sam realized that now the new acquaintance would pay and leave, and this was not in the plans of the man. That's why he said, "And you just like that you will leave now. I was hoping we could still have a good time and talk. I would suggest you to come to my place, but you realize that I will not surprise you there, because it is a rented room, where there is only 1 bed and a desk with 2 chairs. Are you asking me to visit? Are you in no hurry with your socializing? I thought we were modern people, and you obviously liked me. Why deny yourself the pleasure if we both don't want to part? I can't argue with you. Okay, let's go to my place, but we'll get some champagne on the way." Soon the couple left the restaurant, and the woman hailed a cab. Sam was surprised to ask why she did not drive her own car. Adriana said with a smile that if she goes to a restaurant for dinner, she allows herself not to drink a strong cocktail. And if she does it, she does not get behind the wheel of a car in an inebriated state. Sam listened to the interlocutor and said, "And you are not only a beautiful woman, but also wise. You will be lucky to have a man who can capture your heart. Today you have showered me with compliments from head to toe. That's how you should be complimented. You are a worthy woman, to whom I want to say only beautiful words," quietly said the man, and in one movement attracted the new acquaintance to himself. And then Sam embraced the woman and kissed her passionately on the lips. That night the man spent at Adriana's place. Early in the morning Sam got up, while his partner was still asleep, and went to the kitchen. The man wanted to make coffee and so opened one of the cupboards as from behind he heard the voice of the landlady of the apartment, who said, "And you're looking for something to eat. You don't hide jewelry and money in the kitchen. And you might have thought that about me," the man said glumly and turned to the woman. He came close to Adriana and said, "I wanted to brew the most beautiful lady a fragrant drink and serve it in bed. But I don't know where to find a pot and coffee. I like your coffee idea," the woman said with a smile and reached up to Sam's face to kiss him. The man at the same moment embraced his partner and nestled his lips on hers, and then abruptly pulled away and mumbled, "I don't think we need coffee now. We need to continue the night's fun. Well, go to bed." After a while, Sam was lying on his back and breathing heavily. Adriana sat next to him and ran her finger over the man's face. The woman looked at the guest and thought about something. Sam hugged the landlady and said that it was time for him to look for a job. Adriana grinned and said that today was Sunday, and it was unlikely to find a job on that day. Then the woman offered the man a few days to get settled in New York. The man gladly accepted. 2 weeks had passed since Sam had met Adriana. All this time he was staying with her. The man complimented the woman every day when she arrived after work. always made sure to cook delicious meals. And Adriana loved it. It seemed to her that the man really loved her. And so one day she struck up a conversation. "I know you're looking for a job, but you're getting a lot of bad ones. Maybe let me talk to my cousin, and he'll come up with something decent for you. You don't have to talk to anybody. I'm a man, and I have to take care of myself. If I don't find one in 2 weeks, I'll go to my homeland." "Are you saying you'll leave me?" "I thought so," the man said disappointedly. "Who told you I'm quitting? I'll work shifts. I'll live with you 1 month and work the next. I'd ask you to marry me. But you'd refuse to marry an unemployed man. And you first offer, and then already think," the woman said slyly. Sam mentally rejoiced because that's what he wanted. The man knelt down on one knee in front of the landlady and quietly made her a marriage proposal. Adriana hugged the head of her lover and happily mumbled that she agreed to become his spouse, and immediately added that they would go to the registry office tomorrow. Sam didn't argue. He asked only one thing: "Let's not organize a lavish celebration. Let's just sign everything and that's it. We're not 18 years old enough to have a big party." "If you say so. But I have a little condition that you let me talk to my cousin about the job. You know it's not gonna work if you just sit at home and do nothing. We'll talk about it later." Soon the couple filed a registry office application. Sam knew he was getting married. He hid it from his parents as well as his sister. He thought that it could be announced after a while. The man himself did not realize why he made such a decision. And soon the couple signed. They celebrated the ceremony in the same restaurant where they met. Adriana sat and admired the white gold wedding ring. Across from her sat her already legal husband, who leisurely sipped champagne from a glass, looking at his wife. It had been a week since Sam had married Adriana, and then the man received a phone call from his sister, tearfully and through sobs, informing him that her daughter had gotten worse. An operation was required as soon as possible. Sam asked Nancy to calm down and said the money would be there within a few days. Mail. After his sister's call, he paced nervously around the apartment, thinking about how to ask Adriana for money. Sam did not know how his spouse would react to his request to borrow money. And when the wife came home, the man asked her to sit down to talk. Adriana saw that her husband was worried about something, so she patted him on the arm and spoke softly. "You don't have a face on you. Tell me what's wrong." "My sister needs money and a lot of it." "How much and for what purpose?" Sam said the amount and then told him about his niece. Adriana listened attentively to her husband, and when her husband was silent, she sat silently for a while and looked at the floor. At that moment, the man sat with his hands clenched in a fist and waited for his wife's decision. Adriana, after some thought, said that the sum was very large and she could not give it so easily. Then the woman added that she had not lived with Sam long enough to trust him with everything. The man did not like the words of his wife, and he nervously said, "Will you help me or not? If you write a receipt that my sister will give me these finances within a certain time. But I can't give you a receipt instead of my sister," the man said in a perplexed tone. "Then we are obliged not to give the money to your wife. I realize it sounds absurd, but you also understand me correctly. We have not had time to get together. How do you need a certain amount of money? What if in a couple of weeks you come and divorce me? If you want to take offense, this is the only way I'm going to give you the money. You write a receipt that's notarized. I didn't expect that from you. Okay, I agree to your terms, but then let your brother find me a job and high paying," the man said. He immediately called his sister and told Nancy that tomorrow he would transfer the required amount of money to her in the evening. The next day, Sam and his wife visited a notary. The man wrote a receipt and then received the money, which he immediately transferred to his sister. Nancy, as soon as she received the money, then called her brother and wondered where he got so much Sam. He hastened to reassure his sister and told her that he had been approved for a loan from the bank. Nancy thanked her brother and said that she and her husband would pay back the debt whenever possible. Sam chimed in response. "Let me go on about this nonsense. You don't have to give me anything. I gave the money gratuitously. The most important thing now is for my niece to get well as soon as possible." A month passed after Sam transferred the money to his sister. During this time, Nancy and her daughter had an operation in St. Petersburg, and the girl was on the mend. Adriana introduced her husband to her cousin Mark. The man was the director of a furniture factory. Sam immediately approached his new relative with a request to get him a job. Mark Markovich answered, "I'll take you to my factory. I'll give you the position of a small supervisor. But in fact, you won't have to do anything. In principle, you will be introduced to all the subtleties. Your companion. Let's just say that you'll only work your ass off and get paid for it. If you want to go deeper into the labor activity and promote yourself, then you'll have to take more responsibility and learn a few things. What do you think of my offer? I'm in. I'm tired of sitting at home and staring at the TV all day long. It'll give me some variety in my life." Soon Sam went to work, and in fact, the man was explained his duties, told what he had to do. Sam was well aware that the position was a fictitious one, and in fact, he did not have to do anything. After the first day of work, the man called his wife and asked her for a festive dinner. Adriana readily agreed and suggested celebrating the first day of work in a restaurant. Sam gladly agreed. And now the couple is sitting in the restaurant and having dinner. Sam enthusiastically tells how the first day of work went. The woman listens to her husband and thinks how good it is that Mark helped her husband with his work. It had been a month since Sam had gotten a job. The man felt as if life was passing him by. He was bored with his life. He didn't want to go home because he didn't want to see his wife's face. After all, he understood perfectly well what he had married this woman for. Work also did not bring joy, and the man went to the furniture factory only for a tick and often left work, not waiting for the end of the working day. And so Sam decided to leave the factory early to go for a walk in New York. The man packed up and left the factory. He walked down the street and looked at passers-by. And then his attention was attracted by a girl who was standing and feeding birds with a mug of bread. The man approached the stranger and politely inquired, "Can I keep you company?" The girl looked at the man and smiled coquettishly at him. And then she handed Sam a piece of bread and offered to help her in this business. In a few minutes, the couple were talking animatedly about the girl. The man learned that her name is Lola. She is 24 years old and works as a nurse in a hospital. She lives with her mom in a 2-room apartment. After the couple ran out of bread, the man suggested that the girl go to a cafe and continue the conversation. Lola did not refuse, and soon they were already sitting in the institution and drinking coffee. The man looked at the interlocutor and imagined how with her he could have fun in bed. The girl, as if reading his thoughts, said, "Probably anticipating that very soon you and I will make love." "How did you guess that?" Sam said, perplexed. "Yes, I could tell from the look in your eyes. You're undressing me with your gaze in the cafe, so I want you so much if you understood everything from my look. Then offer me a place and let's go. Why waste precious time if our desires coincide?" The man laughed and then asked the girl to wait for him, and he quickly left the cafe. Sam hurried to the kiosk where they sold the press. He bought a newspaper. He found an ad for an apartment for rent and quickly called it. The man agreed with the landlady on his cell phone and then returned to Lola. And soon the couple was already at the rented apartment, where they made love. It took about 3 hours before the man lay on his back in satisfaction. He felt good with this girl, who did not ask unnecessary questions. At this moment, he imagined that very soon he would have to get dressed and return home to his hated wife. And at the same moment, the phone rang. It was his wife, who capriciously mumbled, "Where the hell are you?" "The working day is long over, and you are not home yet?" "Don't worry, darling, I just decided to take a walk today. I'm going home to warm up dinner." After these words, the man turned to Lola and asked the girl if she liked everything. The young woman replied with a nod and immediately asked if they would meet again. Sam kissed his partner with a passionate kiss on the lips and replied that they would definitely see each other more than once. And then the man asked Lola to dictate his phone number. The girl complied with Sam's request, and after that the couple parted. Soon the man came home, where a disgruntled Adriana was waiting for him. The woman, not hiding her bad mood, asked Sam next time he wanted to go for a walk to put her on notice. The man shrugged in response and only asked, "I will be fed in this house." After meeting Lola a few days passed, Sam again wanted to meet the girl. He called her, made an appointment, and as before, the couple again rented a one-room apartment where they had fun. And then the man, as always, promised the girl that this meeting would not be the last. And after that, he gave the young woman a gold chain, which he had bought especially for her. A month flew by as Sam secretly met with Lola. He enjoyed seeing this girl. He enjoyed giving the young woman inexpensive gifts, which she gladly accepted. Sometimes Sam even wondered whether he would be able to start a family with Lola. However, he did not ask the girl a direct question, and so Sam wanted to see Lola again. The man, as always, called the young woman and scheduled a date at a rented apartment. Sam had left work on his lunch break that day. He wanted to spend as much time as possible with the girl today. Before the date, the man stopped by the store and bought Lola expensive perfume, and already soon Sam was in the nude in bed with a young woman. Suddenly the phone rang. The man, without looking, pressed the answer button, and hearing the greeting of his wife, quickly replied, "I'm not comfortable talking, I'm in a meeting. I'll call you back later." And only the man wanted to disconnect the cell phone as he heard the angry speech of his wife. "At the meeting, you say? Isn't that brunette you're reading the report now?" Rose eyes. "I'm calling you via video link. Okay, honey, we're gonna have a short conversation. And not over the phone, but in person. I'll meet you at home immediately." The man looked at the screen of the phone perplexed. He was cursing himself for not looking at the cell phone when he turned it on. In the meantime, Lola got up and started to get dressed. Sam was now looking at the girl, who was almost dressed. The man called out to the young woman and suggested that they stay a little longer to talk. Lola glanced at her partner. She sat down next to him, asking him, "What do you want to tell me? You understand everything perfectly well. The wife is now obviously going to ask for a divorce. And I want to ask you if you want to marry me." "No, I was just seeing you for fun. I don't plan on getting married. At least not at the moment." "Do you mean to say that you have no feelings for me, and you are writing from a girl's answer?" The interlocutor said, surprised. "If you mean love, then I can say that I do not love you. I just feel good with you in bed. I like it when you give gifts, and that's all that keeps us together. In that case, it was the last time we'd see each other. I thought you loved me. Okay, go on, go, and I won't detain you any longer." As soon as the girl left the apartment, the man put his hands around his head and thought. He understood perfectly well that now a rather unpleasant conversation was waiting for him at home. Sam felt that he was in prostration. On the one hand, he was glad that everything had happened this way. After all, now he did not have to pretend to be a man in love with his own wife. But on the other hand, now meant that going to restaurants, trips to the racetrack, as well as visiting theaters, all this stops. The man sighed sorrowfully. After these reflections, he quickly gathered himself and then hurried home, where his angry spouse was waiting for him. And as soon as Sam entered the apartment, he saw that in the hallway there was a bag, and next to it a small package. The man passed into the living room, where the spouse was sitting in an armchair. The woman gestured to the second chair. Sam sat down and looked at his spouse, and the woman coldly said, "You are an excellent lover. Nothing can be said here, but that's your value. You do not need to explain popularly that after your treason, I'm not going to live with you. And I didn't find myself in a dumpster to be treated like that, and especially you, who's a real pauper. I'll file for divorce. You don't have to worry about that, do you? You'll have the state tax deducted from your paycheck, although you can't expect to get a paycheck. I hope you haven't forgotten that I have a receipt in which you agree to pay me the money. From now on, you are no longer my husband, but only a man who owes me money. And one more thing. You no longer work for my cousin. He'll fire you for cause. That's a little favor from me to you. Now you're free to go on your way, rolling around in bed." The man stood up. He wanted to answer the woman rudely, but he forced himself not to say any nasty words. Sam looked at the landlady and then put his hand in his jacket pocket and wanted to go to the exit. But then his palm fumbled for a small box. The man took out the object and was surprised to notice that it was perfume, which he intended to give and forgot. Sam turned to his wife and handed her the box and said, "It's been a long time since I gave you a gift. Let this perfume be a parting gift from me. I beg you, do not hold a grudge against me. I wish you in the future to meet a worthy man who will love you with all his heart and never hurt. Don't worry about the money. If I owe you, I will give it to you. I will warn you right away that perhaps the next payment can be a little delayed, because I will still have to find a job. After all, you said yourself that I'm not working for Mark anymore. Now I'm leaving and I wish you happiness." Sam picked up his bag and left the apartment, never to come back here again. He walked for a while and then turned into a public garden, where he sat down on a bench and thought about what he should do next. Sam did not want to stay in New York, as he realized that it was a really expensive city. The man pondered for a while as his sister called him. Sam picked up the phone and greeted Nancy, and she quickly spoke to Sam. "Come to the village at once. Mom had a heart attack. She has been taken to the district hospital. How is she doing? What do the doctors say? We won't know until tomorrow." "What kind of day is this?" "Only trouble," the man said glumly, and immediately added that he was going to the train station to buy a ticket for the nearest flight. The man only wanted to disconnect the connection when Nancy spoke again. "What happened there?" "What kind of trouble?" "I'm fine." Without thinking, I said, and after these words, I immediately disconnected the connection. Sam now realized that as soon as he appeared at home, his sister would not give up on him until she knew the whole truth. A day later, Sam was already in the village. He learned from Nancy that his mother was better and could be visited. The man went to see his mother. The very next day after his arrival, Sam bought some fruit and soon went to the hospital. He came to the post, where a small girl was sitting and writing something in a journal. The man walked to get her attention, and then he heard from the nurse. "You don't want to spread infection around here. If there's anything you want to ask me, I'm listening. And I'm not used to talking to a man who's busy doing something else. Why don't you at least look at me? Man, what do you want?" "Talk fast, because I have a lot of things to do," the girl said and looked at the visitor point blank. Sam looked at the nurse and immediately mentally thought it is necessary to be born so scary. But aloud, the man said that he wanted to visit his mother, and he needed to know the room number. The girl, having heard Sam's surname, immediately told him in which ward the elderly woman was lying. The visitor thanked the medic and went further down the corridor. Sam stayed with his mother for about an hour and then left the ward. The man was walking towards the exit when the same nurse he had seen at the post came out to meet him. Sam thought again how unlucky this girl was with her looks, and then he noticed that she was limping on her right leg. The man mentally and thought that such things happen in life. Not only that this girl was born, not pretty, but also the Lord awarded her with a limp. Soon Sam came to the village. His sister immediately came to him and began to ask about the trouble he had in New York. The man refused for a long time, but Nancy was adamant and demanded to tell her everything. Sam couldn't stand it and said in his heart, "You are a pain in the ass, my sister, as only your husband tolerates you. If my niece will go to you in character, then definitely can communicate with you will be only on the phone and only 10 minutes. Don't leave. Tell me what happened. After all, know that I will not leave until I know the truth." Sam sighed sorrowfully and told his sister about his marriage and where he got the money for Kelly's surgery. The man also informed her of his infidelity. Nancy listened to all this news with her eyes wide open, and as soon as her brother fell silent, she slammed her fist into his chest and spoke angrily. "You married this Adriana just to get money out of her. How could you do that? In fact, you promised me that you wouldn't get your finances that way. How could you even keep this from me? Stop raging. It's all in the past. I'm gonna live here with you guys now. I don't know if we're all living together though. Of course we will. When you get a job, we'll all work together to pay off that debt to your ex-wife. All that matters now is that Mom gets better." "You're right about that, Nancy." Sam's mom was in the hospital for 10 days. The man visited the old woman every other day and often met a nurse who was still limping. When Sam saw the girl, he always saw her as an angry nurse. The man himself did not understand why he thought so about her. And before the mother was discharged, he asked her a question. "There's a nurse who works here who has a limp. I think she's angry because it's written all over her face. You shouldn't say she's mean. She's a kind soul. She will find for each patient affectionate words, and no stranger to help nurse to change diapers, seriously ill people. And also when she has a night shift, and she reads books to us. I didn't expect you to praise her so much. After the man's mother was discharged, Sam went to the city and got a job at a factory in a specialty. He decided that he would live his life as he could and no longer looked for rich women. Sam no longer dreamed of a life where he could go to expensive restaurants and drive a cool foreign car. 2 months passed as the man worked at the factory, and one day he was returning home to his rented apartment. After a day of labor, as he noticed a girl who was limping, she took a couple of steps and suddenly fell on the path, which was covered with ice. And at the same moment, 2 guys laughed nearby, and one of them said not only that it was scary, and how the earth bears such persons. Sam was well aware that this phrase was heard by the girl. The man immediately jumped up to the guys and asked them to apologize to the girl. The young men wanted to answer the glory rudely at first, but seeing his angry look, quietly said that they apologize. And after these words, the boys hurried away. Meanwhile, Sam gave his hand to the girl and asked her softly, "Are you not mistaken?" "No, but you shouldn't have stood up for me like that. I'm used to such words long ago." And then the girl looked at her savior and said in surprise, "I know you. You visited your mother in the hospital. I wonder if you memorize all the visitors as you do me. If I'm not mistaken, your name is Helen." "No mistake. Not all the visitors. It's just that you look like a subject." "Well, I won't keep you. I should get home. Why are you running away from me so fast? Let me walk you out so you don't run into guys like that. You gotta be kidding me. Thanks for your help, but you don't have to walk me home. I'd just like to talk to you, but I can see you're being belligerent toward me. All because you think I'm cute. What's the resonance? But it turns out being beautiful isn't always a good thing in life. So what are we gonna talk about?" "I'll find things to talk about," the man said happily. He didn't know, but he really wanted to talk to this girl. The couple walked down the street for a while and talked peacefully. Sam mostly told about his childhood, how he used to joke about his sister. Helen listened to him. I laughed heartily. Soon the young people approached the house, and the girl announced that they were there. The man sighed disappointedly and immediately offered the new acquaintance another walk. However, the girl refused, saying that she had more important things to do. Sam once again sighed disappointedly and said, "Well, at least give me your phone number to call you and invite you for a walk. I have a free day, will be on Thursday. We'll call in the morning and talk about it." And soon the girl left, and the man still stood for some time and thought a new acquaintance. Sam was at this time ready to do anything, only if Helen would be with him a little longer. The man glanced at the house and then turned and went to his room. A few days passed, and it was Thursday. Sam dialed Helen's number on his lunch hour and greeted the girl and then asked her if she would be willing to go out with him today. The girl said yes and told him where to come over and what time. Sam walked to the date, visibly nervous. The man came to the meeting as much as half an hour before the appointed time. He stood and moved from foot to foot, looking for Helen. And soon Sam saw the limping girl. He hurried to meet her, and as soon as he was near her, he took out a small bouquet of flowers from his pocket and handed it to Helen. The girl embarrassedly said, "We'll freeze them now. It's not the month of May. I suggest that we go to the cafe and warm ourselves, and we will not let the flowers die. It's a waste of money. I don't think you're a millionaire's son to spend money left and right. Let's go to my place. Grandma will enjoy the company of a handsome man. That's the thing. But let's stop by the store so I can at least buy a cake, because it's uncomfortable to go empty-handed. You'll be holding flowers, so present them to my grandmother. But I gave you the bouquet." "Again an inconsistency, it comes out," said Sam embarrassedly. The girl laughed in response and said that if they continued to argue, she would change her mind about taking the man to her house. After these words of Alina, the interlocutor raised his hands above his head and said that he was giving up. The couple soon continued on their way. Sam asked the interlocutor to tell about herself. Helen looked at the man and said that she was 24 years old and lived with her grandmother. She also said that last year she entered the medical school on a correspondence course. The girl said that in the future she dreams of becoming a doctor orthopedist. Helen did not tell anything about her father, and about her mother said that she lives in another city. Soon the man was already sitting at the girl's house and talking nicely with the elderly woman. And Helen was setting the table to treat the guest with tea and cakes that the grandmother had baked today. Nickel. After that, Sam began to call the girl often, as well as to visit her. The man felt that he was incredibly attracted to Helen. He wanted to protect her and see her as often as possible. Nickel saw that the man liked her granddaughter. And once, when Sam came to visit, and the girl was not at home at that moment, the old woman turned to him. "Are you serious about hitting on my granddaughter, or do you want to stroke your ego? There are plenty of available girls for that. And if we are having a serious conversation right now, I can tell you that Helen and I have fallen in love. I've never had feelings like this before. And would you believe me, I've been with a lot of women. If you're in love, why did you ask her to marry you? You know, I think I might do that tonight. When Helen gets here, I'll tell her about it. But I'll tell you right away, I'm not going to give you the Goldilocks. You know all about me. But will she agree to marry me? Well, you ask her now. Helen just got home. Idea groom, meet your beloved." Sam happily nodded to the older woman and followed her into the hallway. The couple chatted privately for a while, and then the young people made their way into the hall. Nickel looked at her granddaughter and realized that the girl had accepted the man's proposal. The old lady smiled at the couple and proposed to celebrate the engagement. After these words of the old woman, everyone in the room laughed. Soon the trio sat down at the table. Helen poured tea for everyone and put a vase with jam and dried fruit on the table. The girl watched with delight as the chosen one took a few sips and looked at her. And then he looked at Nicole and softly said, "My future spouse is the most beautiful in this world. And if anyone wants to dispute that, they'll have to deal with my fist. Your future wife is not only beautiful, she's also rich. I know I didn't tell you that, Helen, and I was right to. But there's no point in keeping it a secret now. Her mom lives abroad and has a business there. She offered her daughter to move in with her, but Anishka refused. She said she wanted to do everything on her own, which in fact she does. However, her mother transfers her money every month, which has been accumulating for years, and now there is a very decent amount. You'll have enough for a wedding and a trip, and even to start your own business if you want." After these words, Sam stood up, walked over to Helen, hugged her tenderly, and said to Nicole, "To hell with money. Money isn't what makes you happy. I found my diamond in Helen, and I don't need anything else, but only in the future. A couple of screaming kids, to call us daddy and mommy."
Subscribe and click the bell. This is how one unexpected meeting can not only radically change the life of one person and save another. Having learned the bitter experience, you begin to appreciate every happy moment, every new opportunity, and those who love you, sincerely and freely. Camille's life was difficult from the very childhood. Despite the fact that the girl was born into a family, quite a successful entrepreneur, Stephen was quite successful in pharma. He worked with large chains and supplied medicines to pharmacies. But in those days, the competition was tough. As a result, the family constantly lived in fear. The production was often attacked and ruined by people dissatisfied with the quality and cost of medicines. Even the workers themselves went on strike, demanding that they be given free products. Stephen struggled to control the state of his business and the company's quality, productivity, and profitability. At times, it was easy enough to do so, and in those intervals, the family could afford a life of luxury. But the moment the mass strikes started again, and there was damage to equipment, components for the creation of medicines, and so on, life became difficult. Not only had to cut all possible expenses, but also had to hide from disgruntled people. After all, the threat was for each member of the family entrepreneur. In general, by the standards of the 90s, the family lived quite well. They had their own housing. They could afford to buy clothes every season and had no need for food. But that was only until Stephen's business went bankrupt. As much as the man tried to rehabilitate himself in his direction, find new suppliers and investors, it was never possible to restore the former company. Hard times began for the family. Stephen had a wife, Emily, and a daughter, who was 16 years old at the time. Camille. The woman did not work, but only took care of the household, doing her best to make sure that her daughter received a decent education and grew up to be an excellent hostess. She taught Camille how to serve her properly. Table server to a huge number of dishes told about the history of the country and the world, helped in solving homework, and supported in all endeavors. The relationship between them was trusting. The girl told about all the joys and worries of them. Parents tried to buy Camille the most fashionable outfits, various scientific books and magazines that were interesting to her. They often took the girl to new cities and gave her to all kinds of circles so that she could find her vocation in life and decide on her favorite line of work. By the age of 16, Camille already knew for sure that she wanted to become a famous chef. That after the last year of school, she would definitely go to university and get the desired profession. But life has arranged otherwise. It was in the year when the girl was to finish school. Her father's business was completely destroyed. The family did not have any means of subsistence left, and the possibility of sending her daughter to another city to study at the best university. Not anymore. Parents did not say anything to Camille about plans for the future, and every time tried in every possible way to postpone this conversation. But the girl once found herself in the right place at the right time, and was able to hear that conversation, which not only shocked her, but made her horrified by the indifference and hypocrisy of her parents in relation to herself. "We had a life to come back to," Camille's father said, glaring menacingly at his wife. It was obvious that she did not particularly like the man's proposal and that she strongly doubted the necessity of agreeing to it. "Nothing terrible will happen. She'll love him and everything will be fine. You'll see. And we'll go on living our lives without denying ourselves anything. And we're not eating the last of the pasta." "How can you do that?" Camille's mother said sadly. "We can't just decide her fate on our own. What if he's not as good as you say he is? What if she just doesn't like him? And then she'll have to live her whole life with a man she doesn't like." Emily looked at her husband with some pain in her eyes. He looked completely calm and determined. It was obvious that the man was determined and that no amount of persuasion would change his mind. Camille, who stood quietly outside the door, did not yet realize that she was the one in question, although she had an inkling of it. The essence of the problem was also unclear. All that was clear was that her parents were talking about some guy she should like. The girl began to listen carefully to the further conversation of her parents. Everything would be fine. She was old enough and independent enough to start a separate family life. They would live like this for a couple of years, and then they could get married. "If they do well," the man said, and then poured himself something into a glass at the table. "But what makes you so sure our daughter will like that guy? And we don't know him at all. What if he turns out to be just a cruel tyrant who will just abuse her? We from the whole family know only his father, and that's it." Emily was outraged by her husband's cold and indifferent attitude towards her daughter. "If the father is normal, the son will be normal too," answered Camille's father. "We have no other choice anyway, either to die in poverty or to give my daughter in marriage. The second option is much better. And Camille will live in luxury and will be able to afford an excellent education in the future, and we will not need anything, because we will get a part of the Voloshina family business." There was silence in the kitchen. It was clear that everyone was thinking about something else. And at the time when Stephen was already thinking about how best to play the acquaintance and quickly play the wedding ceremony, his wife was thinking, how could one so easily dispose of another person's life, and how would their daughter be accepted in her new family? Camille stood in utter shock after hearing what she had heard and could not believe that her parents were willing to give her in marriage to an unloved man whom she had never even seen simply for money. In order to get a piece of some company and improve her financial situation, she went to her room, thinking over what she had heard and not understanding how to behave and what to do in the situation. Should she refuse her father's plan or agree to his proposal? After all, they had done everything possible to provide her with a carefree life for so many years. Should she sacrifice her own happiness for the benefit of her parents, or should she refuse to sacrifice and build her life according to her own decisions? On this day, her parents did not say anything to Camille, but she was already thinking over all the advantages and disadvantages of each of the options. As a result, coming to a final decision was not as easy as it seemed initially. The girl was panicky and constantly pensive, and it was difficult not to notice it. So it went on for several days. And then Emily did not endure and decided to talk to her daughter heart to heart. The dream is the beginning. She opens the door to Camille's room. Did something happen to you? You've been sad lately. Is there a problem at school, or did you have another fight with your girlfriend? She sat down on the edge of the bed, clearly indicating that she was expecting an answer from the girl. Camille hesitated for a few moments. Should she discuss her worries with her mother? After all, they hadn't told her anything about a fiancé or marriage. Perhaps they would decide everything on their own, and they would give up the decision and find another option to get back on track financially. Besides, there was still hope that the conversation was not about her, although exactly the opposite was clear from the dialogue of her parents. The girl decided to deal with the situation on her own for the time being, trying not to involve her parents, so that the decision would be made exclusively by her, and for all the consequences she was also responsible for herself. No, I'm fine. It's just that I've already started to prepare for the exams, and I'm very tired of it all. The girl shifted her gaze to the woman, who looked no less worried and loaded than she did. What's wrong with you? You've been kind of sad lately, too. The question clearly took Emily by surprise. She wasn't ready to discuss her husband's plan with her daughter. And so, just like Camille, she decided to keep her problems quiet and divert the conversation away from her daughter, so as not to arouse any suspicion. You know my father's out of work. It's made life a lot harder. You've got debts, you've got to eat, and you'll be graduating soon, and you'll have to continue your studies. And our situation leaves much to be desired. The woman took a deep breath, and it became clear how worried she was about her daughter's future. I think maybe I should get a job. I have a degree in seamstressing. I can take orders or go to the sewing shop. I'll get the hang of it, and I'll be good at it. Emily smiled, looking at her daughter. Who's going to take care of the house then? You won't have time to do everything yourself after work. And Dad's hardly ever home now. He's always looking for ways to start earning again and get back to his own business. It turns out that the house will not look so well maintained and attractive, and the flower garden will have to be abandoned. There would be no one to take care of it. Camille looked at her mother. She looked at her mother, looking away from another Russian test. The woman said nothing. She just sat with her head down and did not understand what she should do in this situation. On the one hand, there was really not enough money to live on, and on the other hand, so much time and effort had been invested in the garden to achieve the result that is now, and therefore Emily could not just give it up. Come on, Mom, the girl muttered, seeing how hard it was for the woman during this period. We will solve everything. You do not worry. And I can also go to work after school, and then everything will be fine. And university. I'll finish a little later, when I have some free money. Or I'll just take night courses. They've become very fashionable lately. Yes, honey, everything will be all right, said the girl's mother, still in the same depressed and frustrated voice. The main thing is to believe in yourself and never give up on your dreams, and then everything will be fine. The woman was about to leave the room when she stopped and added, saying each word in a barely audible voice, the main thing is to make all decisions thoughtfully. Otherwise, you can lose all the joys of life. Remember that the most precious thing you have is yourself, and other people should be responsible for their own life and fate. After that, the woman left the room, barely leaving her all alone without waiting for an answer. This only made it worse. After all, The girl was already sure that she would agree to a relationship with a strange guy just to help her parents establish their condition and affairs. But now, after her mother's words, there were again doubts about how Camille's life would turn out if she could not fall in love with a guy. A few days flew by. The weekend was approaching. Camille was studying hard to pass her final exams at school. Her mother was tending to the house and garden as usual, while her father was always looking for a job that would bring the family back to its former prosperity. Emily never went to get a job. Her husband was adamantly opposed to such an idea, and after a brief argument, the woman still yielded to him. In addition, she herself married quite early and never worked. Therefore, she is possessed by fear and worries about the success of work in her direction. Although, by the way, she has perfectly graduated from a specialized secondary school and even had some awards for professionalism. Friday evening, Stephen returned home a little early and from the doorstep announced to his wife about tomorrow's important dinner. Tomorrow we are to have some very important guests. Christopher and his son. They'll be here at 6 o'clock and everything should be ready by then. Today I helped him find a new area of distribution, and now he wants to discuss further business matters that might help us become business owners again. Co-owners, to be exact. The man was very happy about this arrangement, and it was obvious that he was already looking forward to tomorrow, or rather, tonight. Is this the guy we discussed? Emily asked with some sadness, looking at her husband. Yes, that's the guy. He's very bright, and I had a personal interaction with him today. Polite, courteous. I told you it was gonna be great, and you were worried and stressed out. And now all you have to do is say Camille. No. What? The woman's making a fuss. She can't just walk in and say her future husband is coming over tomorrow. It would cause her great psychological trauma. She has to love him, and we're just gonna help her love him. It's better for everyone, and she won't blame us in the future for choosing the wrong husband in case of any problems. Jesus, Emily, we don't have time for all this planning and games. Camille, grown-up girl, she must realize that sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. Besides, the guy's normal, and he really likes her. I showed him the pictures today, and he really wants to meet her. And it will all work out, Stephen replied. After that, he headed towards his daughter's room in high spirits. Wait, I'm telling you. Emily rushed after him, stopping him abruptly with a jerk of her arm. I'll talk to her about everything myself. Okay, not you. You're not gonna be able to properly explain to her what's going on. And we'll end up without a daughter. The woman looked anxious and worried. Okay, the idea is you talk to her, but no games. She should understand perfectly well that this guy is our salvation, and they should be fine. Let her do whatever it takes to get him to like her and build a happy future with him. If the fool doesn't, everything will work out just fine. The man looked troubled to some extent, but also as relaxed as possible. He did not even doubt that everything should go the best way, that his daughter would agree to marry the guy, and that they would subsequently get a part of a very profitable and prosperous business. The man had no conscience for pursuing his own selfish goals, for possibly ruining his daughter's future. Emily slowly made her way up to Camille's room. She didn't know how to properly present all the information and how to make sure her daughter didn't think she was just being used as a source of income, although in fact she was. Despite the fact that the woman was strongly opposed to this arrangement and the development of her child's life story, she simply could not cross her husband. She could not say anything in response, so as not to end up with nothing on the street, no job and no loved ones around. And here she is already knocking on the door, still not realizing exactly what to say. On the one hand, she blamed her husband for trying to get money any way he can, even to the detriment of the dearest person in his life. On the other hand, she consoled herself with the fact that her husband was doing all this only for the sake of improving their welfare, so that they would not starve and would not need anything. After a brief lull, Camille's voice was heard, which was calm and at the same time sad and depressed. Are you coming in? Or should I come out to you? Why just stand outside the door? Emily opened the door and headed towards her daughter's bed, which she sat on every time she talked. There was complete silence in the room for a few minutes, and then the girl couldn't stand it. Mom, did you want something? Or did you just come to watch me study for the exam? I don't think it's very interesting. Besides, I'm distracted by you, so I can't concentrate on my assignments. Camille was somewhat tense and frustrated. Lately, she had been having some difficulties in her studies, which she tried to solve in every possible way. Without tutors, it was proving difficult to understand new topics and continue to do well in school. But the family could not afford their services. Therefore, the girl tried to learn new topics by any means and sew on them as many assignments as possible. Yeah, honey, I wanted to talk to you. I just don't know how to start. The conversation was spoken by Emily, and lowered her head, wrinkled my nose. But whatever it is, it still has to be said. Camille answered her. That's right. Papa has invited a good acquaintance of his to dinner tomorrow, and he's coming with his son. The boy is very nice. Father says he's very polite and courteous, but tomorrow we'll know exactly how he is. And Dad and I need you to be at dinner too. It will not be nice that on the one hand, the child showed respect, and on the other hand, did not come. The woman was silent, trying to find the right words to continue the conversation. She didn't know how she could make her daughter understand that she would have to get along with the guy who was coming to dinner, and that she would have to build a very successful love relationship with him in the future. The guy's name is John, Emily continued. He's only a couple years older than you and already works for his father's company. He's an engineer. He is a very handsome young man who is working hard to develop in his direction and is ready to start a family. After this phrase, the woman raised her head to assess her daughter's reaction, but she just kept on solving the study option, not reacting in any way to the woman's words. And Dad says that he really liked it. He showed pictures of you, and the guy was really into you. He really wants to meet you. Camille's mother was silent, not knowing what else to add to her speech. She couldn't tell her directly that she would have to marry a man of convenience and live with a complete stranger. She wouldn't even wish such a life on her enemy. And to be pushed into such a difficult decision. Her own daughter. Camille understood perfectly well. She remembered the conversation between her parents. And right after her mother had mentioned the dinner with her father's friend and his son, everything had become clear. The parents had found no other way to fix the financial situation and return to normal life. And so the only option left was to form an alliance between her and a strange guy to get a piece of the other family's business. Camille did not know how to react to the words of her mother, who was so carefully trying to tell her not the most pleasant news. She took a few minutes to go through her thoughts and mull over everything that was going on. After which she spoke calmly. I hope that we'll get along well with him. Maybe we'll even have a good conversation, if he's really a good person. Camille mouthed. This without even taking her eyes off the book she was reading while sitting at the table. I hope I'll make a good impression on all of them, too. Quite a good impression. I'll try my best to do so. The girl continued reading, in no other way, not responding to her mother's words. She could sense how difficult this conversation was making her feel, and so she made the decision to just sweetly agree to dinner and give hope that she would like the guy, and he would like her, and then everything would be just fine. Despite the fact that Camille has never met John yet, she already disliked him. On the one hand, there is the possibility that the guy himself is not in the best situation and just has to get married to somehow improve his family's condition. But on the other hand, how could he say he liked her if they'd never met in their lives? So he judged a girl solely on her looks, which is the worst trait in a man. In Camille's opinion, she herself never judged anyone by their clothes and appearance, but by getting to know the person, and only after that to draw some conclusions about him. For her, the soul, behavior, and character were more important than mere rags, which would not reveal a rotten soul. The girl had no choice, because she had already agreed to dinner, and therefore she could only hope that she could get along with the guy, and he would be a very adequate young man who would treat her with respect. Otherwise, to build a relationship with him will be as difficult as possible. After all, the girl was used to independence and normal relations with her surroundings to mutual respect. In addition, she had a very high self-esteem. She evaluated herself and realized that she would not allow anyone to treat her as a servant, as one who owed something to someone. She is above it all and would rather go to work to earn her own living than to grovel before someone, to tolerate disregard for her feelings and emotions. But only time would tell what her future husband would be like. Camille began to prepare for dinner several hours in advance. She wanted to make a positive impression on important people, and therefore she was responsible for the choice of outfit and image in general. It was decided to dress quite discreetly and laconically. Thus, elegantly classic black dress, curls, and minimal makeup looked perfect, although it added visual age to Camille. By the time she was just about to sit down and read a book, the doorbell rang. Voices were heard on the first floor. It became clear that it was the guests who had been invited to dinner. "Camille, we have guests coming downstairs." The father's voice came from downstairs. The girl looked at herself in the mirror once more, fixed her dress curls, and headed for the first floor. She felt a terrible excitement and worry about what her potential future husband would be like. After a few seconds of confusion, she headed to the first floor, where Emily was already telling the guests to come to the table. Camille stopped on the threshold to assess the situation. At the table sat her father, a grown, solid man who was his buddy, and a young guy who was staring intently in her direction. She made her way to the table, and the moment the girl was almost seated at the well, he said, "Honey, this seat is for your mother. Please sit down in the other empty seat. I would like her to sit next to me." Father smiled. The only free seat left was next to the boy. He still continued to stare at the girl, making her uncomfortable. But the moment she sat down next to him, John just shifted his already bored look to his father, making it clear that he wasn't very interested in this dinner. There was an immediate conversation between the fathers. The young men just sat silently. No one dared to start a conversation. "So you are still a little schoolgirl?" Suddenly the boy asked, without even turning toward Camille. "I thought you'd be older." "Yes," the girl replied. "I'm finishing my last year of high school this year. If it works out, I'll go to college. And if not, I can work." At that moment, John turned towards the girl and said, "A girl doesn't need an education to be a great housewife. Your mother should have taught you everything. School, okay, to have something to talk to a girl about. It's worth finishing. And the rest is a man's prerogative. And I don't think girls should be allowed to go to university at all. If you can't find a normal husband, then work as a servant, and that's it. Don't get involved in men's professions." All this sounded quite aggressive and even angry. Camille was silent for a couple of minutes, thinking about what she had just heard. After that, she answered to the guy, saying with confidence, "I do not think that a girl should not study. Education plays a huge role in everyone's life. And if there is an opportunity to get it, you should hold on to it. Otherwise, you could just be left with nothing and really only work as a servant." The girl was silent for a few seconds and then added, "What about marriage? Well, if a girl is lucky enough to get married and there is no need for additional sources of income in the family, if her husband fully provides and satisfies all her needs, then you cannot work and just do the house, keep cozy in order. But it happens that for one reason or another money is needed, and one husband cannot earn it in large quantities. And then the wife can also go to work, so that their joint life became much better." The girl finished her thought. After that, she was silent again. For a few minutes, the boy did not react to Camille's utterances, but just listened attentively to the conversation of the fathers, who were discussing business and further development in this or that direction. And only at the moment when the conversation of the parents came to the usual worldly questions, he again turned towards the girl and in no less rude and arrogant manner spoke. If a girl is not a fool, she will not marry a man who cannot provide for her and fulfill all her financial needs. And in case money is scarce, the husband should look for additional ways to earn money, but certainly not the wife. And if a girl starts working, she loses all her attractiveness and sexuality and just becomes a worn-out workhorse, living with whom is boring and unbearable. The guy looked at the girl, gauging her reaction and waiting for an answer. What about love? After all, not everything in this world is decided by money. It sounded in some way even childishly naive and stupid, but at the same time the girl was completely sure that her position was correct. Can one live with a man without love? It would be a kind of violence against oneself. And besides, you'd have to spend an inordinate amount of time to get accustomed without love. I think it would be more violence to yourself than any relief in life. I'd rather work than live like that with someone I don't love. Love is something made up by sentimental poets. Nonsense, it doesn't exist. There is only the satisfaction of physical needs. And all these stories about the soul, about love, falling in love, affection, all this nonsense, replied the boy and turned away to his father's. The conversation between the young men was definitely not going well. Despite the fact that the boy was outwardly attractive enough, kept his posture and looked decent, Camille did not like him at all, mostly because of his manner of speaking. She didn't agree with such a life position, and therefore she couldn't imagine how this guy was going to find a girlfriend and a future wife. Although, on the other hand, provided that love does not matter to him. And the most important thing is looks and fulfillment of physical needs. Special problems with finding a girl should not arise, especially he is ready to fully provide all her requests and desires. And therefore she can even not work and do not go to university. Such a future Camille clearly did not want for herself. She had goals and ambitions. She strived for education and development in the chosen direction. Therefore, life with such a man will definitely bring her disappointment. But there is a possibility that he will change. People change in the name of love and the person they love, or it's not him. And the guy really rejects all feelings. For the rest of the dinner, the guy and the girl never spoke again. Their life positions were completely opposite, and therefore there was simply no point in continuing the dialogue. In addition, John devoted a huge amount of time exactly to the dialogue of fathers, trying not to miss a single detail. It was obvious that the guy was much more interested in work and career advancement, options for developing his own business, than the potential development of a love relationship with Camille. Toward the end of the dinner, when the guests were about to leave, Christopher spoke after shaking hands. "Now we're expecting you for a return dinner. You'll get to meet my wife. She couldn't make it with us tonight. She had a bad day. But I'm sure she'll be glad to get to know your family a little better, especially since we plan to be in-laws soon." Emily didn't expect such a statement from her guests. Therefore, she expected a mixed reaction from Camille. But the girl stood completely, calmly restraining her emotions and not giving the impression that what she said had hurt or shocked her in any way. Not once at dinner had anything been said about John's future, and therefore the girl assumed that it was just an acquaintance, after which everything could still change. But judging by the behavior and utterances of the guy, he did not care about feelings. The main thing for him was to get a girl and his wife who will not work and study and will just follow all his whims. After the guests had left, the father turned to his daughter and said, "But what do you think, John? He's a smart guy who knows his business well enough to be serious and responsible. I'm sure you like him. How could a girl not like him?" His father says that crowds hang on him, but he thinks only about the future of the company and devotes all his free time to education and development in his chosen direction. That's great, isn't it? I think you two get along great and will make a great married couple where you will have quite a bearable relationship. My father smiled as he looked at Camille, who was listening attentively without showing any emotion in response to his words. It seemed to me that he was just a sensual robot who was only looking for his own benefit and wanted to be in charge of the family. to make all the decisions himself and completely limit his wife's will. He said that the girl should not study and work, that her place at home is as a servant, and that's all there is to it. And the man should already earn and independently solve all arising issues. Is this normal for a family relationship? She asked, looking intently at her father. Emily, all this time, just stood and listened attentively to her husband and daughter. She couldn't believe that she was always so emotional and testy. Camille calmly talking about a potential marriage to a man she was seeing for the first time in her life. That she wasn't in front of the reading, but just calmly voicing her opinion, backing it all up with arguments and reasoning is unquestionable. The woman did not know whether to add something in this situation, on whose side it is better to stand, so she just kept quiet. But you know, there are different families. The father shrugged indifferently, making it clear that this situation is as calm as possible. The guy just has such a worldview that he wants to completely relieve his future wife of all worries and troubles and fully provide for her. This is the dream of almost every girl. So I honestly don't understand what exactly you're unhappy with. You won't have to spend a few more years on your education. You'll never have to work and scrape pennies for bread. You won't need anything. It's a great marriage that will make your life just perfect. The father looked reproachfully at his daughter, who was still standing calmly in front of him, waiting patiently for the answer to his question. I believe that such a marriage can bring nothing but indifference and disappointment in love, replied Camille. A husband should be chosen so that you want to spend every minute of your life with him, not so that you can hope that he will stay at work late at night again. Stephen was silent for a few moments. It was evident that the man was thinking over what he had said, that he had some doubts. But afterward he said indifferently, "You can get used to any man. And if you want it badly enough, not just affection, but love will appear. And the other person can be convinced of this too, if you put enough time and effort into solving the problem and misunderstandings. Marriage isn't always about love. Sometimes it's just cold calculation. And sometimes people only after some time in the role of husband and wife realize how dear they are to each other and how much in love with each other. It's not for nothing that they say that from love to hate is one step. So you can take it backwards and just love a person who at first glance seems just hateful." The man shifted his eyes to his wife, perhaps expecting some support. But the woman didn't utter a word, just lowered her eyes and remained silent to everything he said. He looked at his daughter again. Camille pondered over everything her father had said. On the one hand, she hoped that love could indeed appear in the most unexpected ways, and she believed that a person could change a great deal. But on the other hand, she realized that this was very, very rare. She looked up at her father for a few minutes and said indifferently, "Love can appear in a week, in a year, and in 10 years. But how can you live with a man until it appears, especially to be his wife, if he will not respect and appreciate you, if you will be just a servant for him? Is it worth to regard such relations as high and sincere? Or is it just a mutual satisfaction of needs, which may not suit one of the parties?" Camille crossed her arms on her chest, making it clear that she was not going to accept her father's position and would stand her ground to the last. Sometimes you can be patient for the good of yourself and others. This conversation is over. I advise you to think about what you can occupy yourself with until love appears. What can you focus your attention on so that you don't have to think about such nonsense? You're just too naive for this cruel adult world. You don't realize how complicated life can be, and how much effort you have to put in to get even the slightest chance of getting a good job. Someday you will realize that everything you do is for the good, and that every decision you made was right and led to positive results. After saying this, Stephen headed for the kitchen, and only the daughter's mother remained in the hallway. They stood in silence. No one started a dialogue. "Do you think so too?" Suddenly, Camille asked her mother. "Of course not, my dear," the woman said, clearly not expecting such a question from her daughter. "But on the other hand, love does come quite unexpectedly. Try to just give the relationship a chance, and maybe you'll do just fine." The mother lowered her eyes, clearly feeling guilty for accepting her husband's position, even though she strongly disagreed with it. And if love doesn't come, what can you do? Then something will have to be done. In our time with this, all became easier. Now you can just divorce without much trouble and judgment of society, and then you can start building your life completely differently. Mom, you realize that love doesn't matter to this guy. He himself personally said that it doesn't exist, and that the only thing a woman does is stay at home. And if I want to develop, if I want to study or somehow realize myself in life, then what? No one can forbid you anything. Honey, Emily replied. You are a completely free person who can decide for herself what to do and how to do it. Do you want to study or work, or just sit at home and enjoy the privacy and silence? And you can also completely change your life at any time to leave that person you don't love. Give up a job you hate. Drop out of university in any course, just because you are disappointed in your chosen direction. Remember that you are a completely free person, and no one should limit your life. But sometimes you have to think about the consequences of your decisions. They could be disastrous. The woman lowered her head. I have to go and clean the table and water the flowers on the second floor. Emily went about her business, and Camille was left standing all alone. What am I going to do? The main question that tormented her to the point of madness. She did not understand how to act, what decision to make in favor of her own happiness and future, or in favor of the happiness and well-being of everyone else. Any decision will affect not only her, but also her surroundings. Therefore, it must be made in a balanced and responsible manner. Meanwhile, John and Christopher, who were on their way home, were also discussing the dinner they had just finished. And what do you think of their daughter? The man asked his son. I think she's just another naive girl who doesn't realize how complicated and unfair life can be. She tried to tell me throughout the evening about love, about light, pure feelings, about how important it all is, just some childish babble. The guy rolled his eyes and pointedly poked, making it clear that such behavior does not suit him at all. He wants to see as his wife a girl who will perfectly understand and accept all his aspirations and desires, who will put the maximum amount of effort to maintain home comfort, to be an ideal wife, and remain as beautiful over the years. Moreover, the guy was not even thinking about marriage. In the near future, he was going to develop exclusively in the professional direction. About the need to get married, stated already directly by his father. Christopher knew about the fact that his father, Camille, certainly had a burgeoning business, after which there was a considerable amount of production facilities. He wanted to get them into his ownership and completely remodel them to maximize the profitability of his business. However, he couldn't say it directly, not until the most favorable conditions were present. Similarly, Camille's father did not tell anyone but his wife about his desire to get a part of the business, so as not to make a fuss or alarm anyone with his decision. Both men believed that after family unification, it would be very successful to improve their position and get an opportunity for a new impetus for development and self-realization. After all, it is much more difficult to refuse relatives, especially considering that it is not accepted in society. But she is still quite small, spoke Christopher, which means that it will be possible to bring her up completely under your needs and preferences, and as a result, you will have a wife, a behavior and character that is completely in line with your preferences. Of course, you will have to spend some time and effort to get an excellent result, but the effort is definitely worth it. And here you are right, John replied and smiled wryly. It remains only to understand how to re-educate her and make her a docile wife who will sit at home and wait for me like a faithful dog. I don't want anything else. All these high relationships are definitely not for me. The only thing I want is to develop our company and earn so much that I don't even have to look at the price tags in the stores and immediately buy everything I want. A guy turned to the window, looking at the passing neighborhood. That's exactly the main job. You will still have time to fall in love. There will be money. There will be love and more than one. Trust my experience. All that's left is to get you married as soon as possible and move on to discussing issues that have to do with our business plan. And then everything will be just fine. And we'll deal with Camille later if she can't be rehabilitated. She won't play such an important role in your life, Christopher said. Then he grinned at how much of a responsibility ordinary girls sometimes took on, who, in fact, had no value at all. An ordinary girl can act like she's more important than everyone around her, as if everyone should reckon with her opinion and respect her every word, but while hard on her not forever. We'll do the wedding and then do whatever you want. It's a deal. The father looked toward his son. All right, but if there's a lot of smartassery, I won't be quiet either. Soon it was planned to attend a dinner to which Stephen and his family were invited. The man had already started to think over the concept of the wedding, to consider possible variants of events, to discuss all the issues with his wife. Emily was extremely reluctant to discuss all the moments, realizing that this decision could simply break their daughter's life. But she did not argue with her husband and agreed with everything he suggests and says. This time Camille decided to dress more brightly and defiantly make a full evening makeup and put all her hair in a tight bundle. Her choice fell on a red dress, which immediately caught the eye and attracted a lot of attention. Such an image in no way corresponded to John's idea of an ideal wife who should sit at home and obey her husband. It was with such a bright and defiant style. She wanted to push the guy away from herself by showing her independence, but she didn't know about his family's plan, that she was to be his wife anyway, that her behavior and appearance were unlikely to influence the decision. The dinner was to be at 6 o'clock, but suddenly Christopher called his companion and postponed the meeting for a couple of hours, citing business. In fact, his son was just late after another quick date, which he often went on, and it would be wrong to start dinner without him. After all, the plan was to discuss the future of John July. The evening began exactly the same way as last time. A certain seating of the guests and a competently set table, outfits, and costumes stood out strongly. Only Camille, who looked bright and defiant and definitely attracted a lot of attention. Of course, she had counted on just such an effect. Counted on the disapproval of her potential fiancé's family. But instead, Christopher complimented her, and John simply smiled as he met her with an appraising six-eyed glance over her body. It turns out that the change in style didn't help at all. The guy is attracted not only reserved and quiet girls, but also sexy and lecherous. Moreover, John liked Camille's image much more than at their first meeting. After all, now he saw at least some advantage in making their union. He realized that she had a very interesting style, and that it could be left for going out with her to friends or to public places. Going out together would still be necessary so no one would suspect anything, and he didn't want to be everywhere with a girl who looked more like a nun. It turns out that the girl's actions only fueled the guy's interest and made him more determined, which did not play into her hands. After a while, lively conversations at the table began. The parents were talking among themselves, and the guy and the girl just sat and silently listened to numerous stories and plans for the future, exactly until the talk was about their future and their upcoming marriage. So asked Evelyn, who was John's mother, "When do we plan to play the wedding?" She was clearly happy with this arrangement and wanted to have the celebration as early as possible. But when Camille turns 18, Emily replied, "How can we have a wedding when we have a legal age requirement for each spouse? Our daughter hasn't reached that age yet, so we will have to wait a little for that day." There was complete silence at the table. Everyone understood that the woman was right in her decisions, but certainly no one planned to wait 2 years. The only one who was happy about this was Camille. After all, for such a long period of time it would be possible to understand without problems whether there was love between them and a chance for its development or not. And then Christopher's voice suddenly sounded. "But why put off the wedding ceremony for so long? It's an eternity. There are workarounds for every law, and those are the ones we're going to use." He smiled and looked in the direction of Camille's father. "But the only reason to get married early is pregnancy. Emily said, shocked at the thought of her daughter having to become a mom at such an early age. I don't agree. Camille stood up sharply at the table, making it clear that she was not happy with this arrangement. I'm not going to be a mom at 16. I don't want to get pregnant by a guy I don't even know. She felt a tug on her arm to sit up. It was John who had made the decision to make Camille calm down and shut up, so that the situation could be discussed further. I'm not going to become a father at such an early age either. I have a career to think about, not diapers and diapers. After all, Camille's mother and the girl herself breathed a sigh of relief. Camille was genuinely glad that her potential husband at least has an understanding of the situation and realizes that everything in life is not so simple. But right after she thought about it, the guy added, we're just doing a pregnancy certificate. And then we can just and quickly get married and not have to do any baby. And then just as easily go and do a certificate that she had a miscarriage. That's it. That's how we're gonna do it. And we don't have to explain anything to anyone. John said it as calmly as possible, without showing any emotion. But the girl was extremely indignant at what she heard. Of course, such news will spread throughout the neighborhood as quickly as possible, and they will go not the best reputation, which would not be desirable. In addition, it can negatively affect the possibility of enrollment in the university. After all, there is a risk that information about early pregnancy will reach the commission at admission. And in this case, you will have to try by all rights and wrongs to cleanse your honor and dignity. That's not a good option, Camille said. I won't be able to go to university, and my fame would spread at the speed of light. I don't want that to happen. Don't ruin my life and deprive me of opportunities just because of your wishes. The father looked menacingly at his daughter, then with a smile on his face said, she is so fiery often, but she quickly withdraws, he said and looked at his daughter again. Let's not postpone the wedding celebration for long. Let's have it as soon as possible. You won't have to study after you get the certificate, John said confidently. Looking at the girl, all you need is to clean and cook at home and keep yourself in order. You don't need an education for that. Besides, we'll need a real baby soon to strengthen our union. And in that case, you just won't have time for a stupid education that won't be useful in life. You should be reading books on how to take care of a baby, to make a normal mother out of you. He indifferently continued to eat, despite the silence at the table. Everyone was completely shocked by what they heard. It is clear that the wedding was planned and discussed on both sides, but the child's such a development was definitely not part of the plans. Although the guy has long ago decided that in order for the union to be strong and long, in any case will have to become a father, despite the fact that he does not want it. So it will be possible to strengthen the union between families and reduce the likelihood of disagreements in business. After all, it is simple to divide it and continue to live as before. When taking into account the presence of a grandson or granddaughter will be extremely difficult. Of course, the child was planned not immediately after the wedding, but soon, in order to eliminate all possible risks. This news he previously wanted to discuss with his father to weigh the pros and cons. But as a result, since there was such a situation at the table, he decided to inform everyone about his decision at once. He had thought it over several times, and he was completely sure that it was the most correct in the current situation, and no one would oppose his decision. For the rest of the evening, the atmosphere was as tense as possible. No one dared to start talking about the baby, and Camille remained silent the whole time. Clearly shocked by all that she had heard, she had almost agreed to become John's wife in order to improve her family's situation and solve some financial issues. But to become a mother and to make a child with a man whom she did not like, but even rather disliked, she was not ready. That's why such news shocked her. Camille's parents were also in a stupor. Father, of course, wanted to improve his welfare and get the opportunity to manage part of the business, but not to become a grandfather. And Emily thought only about the fact that after the birth of the child, her daughter would have minimal opportunities to develop and study. It would be harder to find a decent man and go back to the life she had before marriage. Despite the fact that the dinner was intended to discuss a future wedding, the matter was never resolved. It was soon decided to split up and discuss things a little later, in a couple of days. No sooner had Camille entered her room on her return home than she heard her mother's exclamation of displeasure. It was addressed to her father. "What child? She's a child. You realize she can't drop everything and just give birth to a baby, to a strange guy, so we can live in peace. I can't forgive myself for that." The woman was clearly angry at the situation and did not understand what to do, how to influence her husband and his decision to play a wedding that would ruin the life of their common daughter. "I didn't know about any children," Stephen replied. "In fact, I'm just as outraged as you are. I'll make up my mind. There will be no child. This is just out of line. You should be thinking about work, not about how to make babies as fast as possible." And he seemed like such a reasonable guy to me. The man sighed, and then he spoke. "We'll meet again in a couple of days and discuss everything. I'm sure that everything will be decided in our favor, and no children will be out of the question in the next few years. It's just absurd." After the last sentence, Camille closed the door. Anxiously, she exhaled. She was glad that at least in this matter her parents were completely on her side. It turns out that no one will force her to give birth to a child. And in any case, she will enter the university regardless of whether her future husband wants it or not. She is not going to give up her dream, and therefore will definitely put the maximum amount of effort to stand on her own and achieve her goals. But now, the main thing is to solve the issue of the wedding as soon as possible, so that it is possible to get a divorce as soon as possible in the future. Yes, the girl did not plan to fall in love with a young man and try to change him unto herself. She just wanted to improve the state of her family, to give her father the opportunity to restore the former business, after which she will be able to leave the guy with peace of mind and start living in her own pleasure. For that reason alone, she didn't try to find options to postpone the celebration. She just wanted to do everything with minimal damage to herself, so as not to harm her future and stay with a good reputation. A few days later, it was decided to reconvene with the families to revisit the issue of discussing the wedding ceremony. The first to put forward a proposal was John's father. "Regarding the date of the wedding, I suggest we organize everything next month. There will be a free window of time to prepare for everything and have the best ceremony possible. I think that we should not be in a hurry, so that our children will remember this day for a lifetime, so that there will be no unpleasant rumors, and certainly not a bad reputation about families." Christopher looked carefully at his wife, who agreed, nodding at everything that was said. The woman in general was not much of a talker. In meetings, she rarely voiced her opinion, and always simply agreed with what her husband said. One would have thought that she simply had no say in the family. Actually, that's what Camille thought, and was worried that after the wedding, she would also have to sit silently and just nod. "I think it's too late," the boy muttered. "We can have everything fully organized in just a couple of weeks. I don't see any point in delaying the celebration. All the more so, everyone realizes that the wedding is for business purposes only, so there is no point in waiting for love and affection to appear. They can appear in a year or two, and we just don't have that much time. Besides, when we start together, it will be much easier to get used to each other, and therefore the relationship will develop much better and faster." The guy looked in the direction of Camille, who was clearly loaded with numerous thoughts. "I think it's too fast," Emily replied. "We just can't get ready for the wedding in such a short period of time. Not only do we have to find dresses and various attributes, but we have to coordinate everything." She did not have time to finish, because Camille intervened in the conversation and said confidently, "We can do everything in a couple of weeks. That's why I agree with John. We should do it as soon as possible. Otherwise, it could take a long time. We don't want to put off the preparations. Let's start making the guest list now, and tomorrow we will prepare for the ceremony itself, decide all the organizational issues and so on. To say that everyone was surprised by the girl's answer is an understatement. No one expected such behavior from Camille, who just a couple of days ago completely rejected the idea of marriage until the age of 18, so as not to spoil her reputation. And now she agrees to any conditions, so also takes the initiative to spend everything in the minimum time. John was pleased with such behavior on the part of the girl. He thought about the fact that she began to change under his influence, that she accepted her position, and now will constantly agree with him. He didn't even think about the fact that she could pursue her own goals and aspirations, that she could do it all just based on her own interest and preferences. But all in all, it didn't matter much to him. The main thing is to quickly organize the wedding, and then begin the process of her upbringing under himself. John did not even doubt that he could without much trouble to break and completely change the girl's behavior to suit his needs. Preparations for the wedding took place as quickly as possible. Invitations were sent out, and literally the next day after the ceremony was discussed, and in a few days the room was already being prepared and outfits for the bride and groom were chosen. All the bills were paid by the groom's side, so Camille decided not to deny herself anything. She chose the best outfits, included in the menu very interesting and not cheap items, insisted on decorating the hall with fresh flowers and so on. The girl decided to organize everything as much as possible under her taste, so that this event brought her some joy, albeit fleeting. Despite the huge expenditures, Christopher did not refuse anything in the organization of the celebration and did not show anyone his dissatisfaction with the situation. Camille's parents did not even try to stop her or change her mind about this or that decision. After all, she immediately made it clear that everything will be either the way she wants or nothing. Everything was ready by the day of the registration. The result exceeded all expectations. It seemed that the wedding was planned for months. There was a thorough preparation on all issues, and a considerable amount of time was given to each element of decorative design of the hall and restaurant. Everything was combined and perfectly harmonized. John's side invited a lot of guests. Camille decided to invite a minimum number of people so as not to provoke gossip, although of course they will appear in any case. After all, everyone invited perfectly understood that the wedding will be held only because of the interesting position of the bride. After all, there were no other options for its organization. The celebration was quite noisy and fun. Camille Otreveazia, full on this holiday, in anything did not deny herself and behaved not in the best way, especially considering that according to legend she was pregnant. To suspect that the wedding ceremony was not real, it was as difficult as possible. The only thing that caused some whispers was the kisses of the bride and groom, which were quick and cliffy. It was as if the young people were just uncomfortable kissing each other. But it was all blamed on the bride's shyness and her pregnancy hormones. After the end of the marriage ceremony, the young people went to the apartment that belonged to John and now became their home. It remained only to come to terms with the new situation, settle in a new place, and wait for the improvement of the state of their family, after which Camille will be able to return to normal life. But everything turned out to be not as simple as she wanted. Soon after the wedding ceremony, the girl learned that Christopher refused to formalize her father's vows. Consequently, the opportunity to become a manager Stephen simply did not have. However, another development was proposed. It was decided that the man would be hired as a manager to oversee work processes, but only on the condition that a general power of attorney was granted for his business in the name of John's father. This was necessary in order to begin restoring the facility and refurbishing it in a different direction. This was the only way to get production back up and running. Another nuance was that once the company was rebuilt, Stephen Christopher would be entitled to a portion of the income that would go to him for the rest of the company's life. The arrangement turned out to be completely different from what the girl's family expected, and therefore had to urgently think about what to do and how to act to give her father the opportunity to rehabilitate. After a few days, Camille still made a difficult decision for herself. She is staying with John until her father is able to continue running his business on his own. Yes, he will have to give a portion of the profits to Christopher, but he will also be able to provide for himself and his mother. And that's the whole point of this plan. All that's left is to wait for this change to happen. Immediately after the wedding, the guy began to make efforts to bend the girl under himself and change her character and behavior. But Camille was not going to give up so easily and turn into a doll, which could be easily controlled at the slightest desire. She continued to show her character and that she was not going to obey anyone and change for anyone. In this way, several months passed. Quarrels were in the Young family all the time. The guy and the girl just did not find common ground because they had completely different goals in life, different views on the proper position of the family, the duties of men and women, the rights of me, rights and opportunities. But no one talked about divorce. After all, everyone understood perfectly well that the set goals have not yet been achieved, and therefore divorce was not an option. Moreover, John was still completely sure that Camille was not going anywhere from him now, just like her family. That she will fully fulfill all the wishes of the guy, will obey him, and in the end, will become an ideal wife in his understanding. The girl successfully passed all school exams and received a certificate. Without hesitation, she went to the university and applied for admission in the direction of a chef. She realized that her independent decision could be the cause of another quarrel with her newly married husband. But that was of little concern to her. Camille thought only about her own future and well-being, completely disregarding all the guy's past statements about education, girls, and their jobs. She understood perfectly well that she just needed to get a higher education so that in the future she wouldn't have to worry about finding a job that would allow her to fully satisfy all her natural needs. Camille returned home in a great mood. After submitting her documents, she met a friend and spent a few hours with her in a cafe. This arrangement did not suit her husband, and every time after such situations at home, she was expected another lecture that normal wives sit at home and wait for their husbands from work. They hang out in cafes and parks with their girlfriends all day long. But today she was waiting for another conversation, even more unpleasant and complicated. Immediately after the girl returned home, she saw John, who stood in the hallway with the most displeased expression on his face. "I do not think that your next moralizing will lead to a positive outcome," Camille said from the doorstep, not even listening to the guy. "What you're telling me doesn't matter, because I'm not going to give up my friends. I'm still going to hang out with them. I'm still going to spend time with them. So get used to it, sweetie," the girl muttered. She was about to go into the room when the guy stopped her abruptly, grabbing her arm. The grip was strong enough that Camille even shrieked and tried to pull her hand out, but to no avail. "And we'll talk about your girlfriends later. There are more serious things to talk about right now," John said. Then with a sharp movement, he turned his wife to face him so that she was as close as possible. "I don't remember that I allowed you to apply to the university." The girl was extremely surprised that her newfound husband already knew about it. She hadn't shared this moment with anyone in particular, but most likely his family just had too many acquaintances who liked to discuss everything that just got in the way. The matter of her admission had apparently been discussed as well. Camille thought for a few moments about what exactly to say to the boy. Then she spoke angrily. "No one asked you. I make my own decisions about my life, and I'm certainly not going to discuss them with someone who doesn't respect my opinion. If I said I'm going to go to university, then I'm going to do it, and no amount of excuses will work on me." She gave her hand another tug, but it had no positive effect. The grip didn't loosen. It even seemed to have gotten stronger, so much so that the bone at Camille and surrendered a strange creak. It hurt. "Let me go," the girl said loudly. "The bruise will remain for the whole arm. And if you break it, what will you do? Then maybe you'll become more difficult, since you don't understand Russian." As if the guy hissed through his teeth. Then he added, "I'm telling you for the last time that you will not enter anywhere, and therefore I advise you to come to your senses, or am I gonna make you do it? You're acting like a little kid. You should be thinking about your family instead of your own. You're not just a girl now, you're a wife. You have to fulfill all your duties to the fullest. I'm doing mine. We don't need any money. Neither does your family, whose father is incapable of anything, if he can't provide for his wife on his own. So stop it, and think about your behavior." The guy let go of Camille's hand and headed for the kitchen to finish the coffee he'd left behind. He didn't want her to go to school, to get an education or develop in any way. It was always compared to his mother, who had given up everything and married Christopher, and had never known any need for anything in her life. Her father provided for her completely and covered all her expenses, and so she could live simply for her own pleasure. And the secret of their happiness lies in the fact that Evelyn never argued with her husband and always listened to his opinion. At least, John was sure of that. He made efforts day after day to re-educate Camille and make her like her mother, but it didn't work very well. In turn, Camille was well aware that Evelyn's life was far from the best. After all, she had no opinions of her own. She could not afford to fully socialize with other people, and even leave the house without her husband's permission. A woman always asked permission before buying something or doing something, never allowed her feelings to come out, and seemed disconnected from the world. Such a young, ambitious, and purposeful girl was certainly not going to become. Therefore, all the stories about the happy life of her husband's parents, she simply passed by her ears. Despite the conflict that had just occurred, Camille did not plan to refuse to enter the university. Moreover, she went to prepare for the entrance exams, which were to be held from one day to the next. There was a lot to learn, so she was glad that John would be at work all day, and she would be able to enjoy the quiet and immerse herself in studying. The next few days were particularly noisy and anxious. The couple were constantly squabbling regarding the girl's admission to university. Every night, John became more and more aggressive and rude, and even swung at Camille a couple of times, but never touched her. However, this did not help him to achieve the desired result, and his wife successfully passed all the entrance tests. The only thing left to do was to come back in a week and sign the admission papers. And from September, she would start studying in her chosen field. She had no doubt that by the time she returned home, her hubby would already know about her success, so she could enjoy her success and his defeat in his attempts to thwart her enrollment. But this evening, the girl will definitely remember for the rest of her life. After all, it was he who had a huge impact on her future fate. She wasn't even surprised to see John right after she opened the door. The guy looked particularly angry and excited. And in such a situation, the girl's feelings were mixed. On the one hand, she realized that she made her own decisions and was responsible for all the consequences, that she had every right to manage her life on her own. But on the other hand, every time she saw a guy in such a state, she could not even imagine what to expect from him. And that's why every time a feeling of fear came up that she couldn't control her neighbors, she didn't know. And therefore the opportunity to seek help in case of anything she had no. She had to solve all conflict situations on her own and only hope that she would not have to call the police or lie in the hospital after another trial. And this evening, the girl was not just worried. "What the hell are you doing?" From the doorstep, the guy started yelling. Before the girl could even close the door, "I told you that you would stay home and be a model wife. Why the hell did you go to university to take exams? Do you think with your head who'd want you like that? You want to cook? You're welcome. The kitchen is all yours. That's where you belong." The guy grabbed the girl's arm and pulled her into the kitchen, then shoved her in and stood in the aisle. "You're the smartest one there. That's where you belong. And don't you dare cross your husband anywhere else. You make me the laughing stock of my friends. How dare you act like that? Didn't your parents teach you any sense at all? Then I will." The girl didn't have time to get a word in edgewise. She just watched him get angrier and more aggressive with every word he said. She watched his pupils change and his fists clench. This had never happened before. And so she felt an unprecedented fear. She felt that there was a very serious threat to her life, which she would not be able to cope with on her own. The most correct decision she made was just to keep silent and wait for the end of the guy's monologue, after which he should calm down. But that wasn't happening. He waited a few minutes, with all the hatred and anger, looking at his wife, after which he continued to speak in the same aggressive and angry manner. Why did we stop talking? Hearing suddenly activated, or brains appeared. Usually you can't shut up. She speaks her mind. Look at her every time. It's over. Her own opinion, what you'll always do now. Is that what you're supposed to do now? Yes, to behave normally and know your place in the house. So that's how it's always gonna be from now on. The guy grabbed the girl by the arm and dragged her to the opposite side of the house. Let's go. I'll show you another one of your places where you should be spending your time instead of hanging around parks and universities. He dragged her into the bathroom. Even though her clothes were always clean and laid out, Camille was well aware of the urgency to do something to keep herself safe. There weren't too many options, and so the moment John dragged her past the front door, she just jerked her arm sharply. Then, without looking back, she ran in an unknown direction. She could hear the guy yelling something back at her. But any stop, any confusion could cause very dire consequences. She ran for a few minutes until she realized that no one was running after her, and that she could breathe out and catch her breath. Camille looked around. The place was completely unfamiliar to her. She didn't understand which direction to go to get to any familiar house where she could feel safe. Her phone had been left at home in her purse, which had been successfully placed by the front door. She didn't even think to grab it as she ran out of the house. All thoughts were only about running away as soon as possible to feel completely safe, to get rid of the potential threat. For over an hour, the girl walked around the neighborhood, trying to figure out exactly where she was. During this time, it had gone completely dark, and it became much more difficult to navigate. Soon she was completely exhausted and had no idea what to do in the situation. The only option was to wait until morning, but she couldn't just go to sleep on the bench. That way she could be found without a problem. Husband, when he will get to work in the morning. This option seemed to the girl the most delusional, and therefore it was decided to look for a place where it would be completely safe to spend at least one night, and then decide what to do next. To find a decent option was not possible. Soon there was no strength at all, and therefore had to go down into the cold basement of an abandoned house, which looked absolutely terrible and even dangerous. But there was no choice. In the basement, the girl saw an old mattress, which was shot with something like a light blanket. She was surprised and frightened at the same time. After all, if a full-fledged sleeping place was organized here, it was very likely that at any moment the tenant of these apartments could come, and then the situation could become much worse. But there was no strength to look for a new temporary shelter. So Camille decided to try her luck. Sleeping in the cold basement was not easy. Not only that the temperature around did not allow to fully relax and felt a strong dampness, the girl still could not calm down after everything that had happened and did not understand what she should do next. Her father had not yet had time to fully restore the business. Yes, and the idea with the wedding did not bring the expected result. And to get a part of the company as a gift for such a momentous occasion did not work out. Yes, Christopher had put a lot of effort into remodeling her father's old company and starting a new production facility, but he did it mostly for his own benefit. After all, part of the profit will come to him in any case after all the work processes are set up. So there's no need for marriage. Or is there? And as soon as Camille went to file for divorce, her father would be left with nothing again, and their family would be on the brink of poverty. Anxious thoughts were weighing on the girl and made her feel the heightened anxiety of the experience. She did not understand what decision would be the most correct. Is it worth it to continue to tolerate such an attitude in his address? Or is it time to get rid of the man who brings only negativity into her life? How to apply and where to go after the divorce? Will John not do something to her or her loved ones in the event that she makes such a decision? After all, as time has shown, the guy is completely insane and obsessed solely on himself and ego. It turns out that the decision may provoke him, and then the consequences will be completely unpredictable. And maybe it's just worth going to his parents and try to talk about everything that happened. It's unlikely that his father would approve of this attitude towards women. But on the other hand, it is completely unclear how exactly he influenced his own wife to become so malleable and agreeable to everything. Maybe she wasn't like that. So one should go to her parents and tell them everything. They would definitely be on her side and wouldn't allow her to be treated like this. But her father had married her off to a man she didn't love. Maybe he would just force her to go back to him to continue rebuilding his company. With such quiet thoughts interrupting each other, Camille did not notice how she fell asleep. The sleep was shallow and very disturbing. She woke up literally from every rustle. So when she heard footsteps early in the morning and jumped up, feeling how hard her heart was beating, she expected to see anyone, a man of no fixed abode or her husband, but not her. A little girl of about 5 or 6 years old was slowly descending into the basement. She took her steps as carefully as possible so as not to trip and fall. Among the debris of old wood and destroyed parts of the house, suddenly she looked up and saw Camille, who was sitting on the mattress and looking with bated breath at the little girl who was coming downstairs. There was an awkward silence, which was interrupted by the little girl. "Hi, I'm Jenna. Don't you have anywhere else to hang out during the day?" asked the girl and continued downstairs, slowly approaching the girl. To say that the picture shocked Camille was nothing to say. She just didn't know how to react to the appearance of a child in this place. Didn't understand what she was even doing here or how she was being let off by her parents alone. The girl looked tidy enough. It was obvious that she didn't live on the streets. She talked well and was neatly forbidden. Yet she went down into the basement of the abandoned house, completely alone, not scared of a stranger in the place. The girl walked over to Camille and sat down next to her on the mattress. She started to look at the toy she had brought with her, then turned around and pulled out another one, which was lying right behind the mattress. How could Camille not notice a child's toy in such a gloomy place? "Baby, what are you doing here? All alone? Or did you come here with your parents?" the girl asked, staring at Jenna. "No, I came here by myself," she answered. "I come here often during the day to play. Sometimes I even sleep at night." The little girl, without much interest in the conversation, began to play with her toys, while making the characteristic funny noises. She did not look in Camille's direction. Camille looked at the little girl who was sitting next to her. "Aren't you scared to sleep here alone? And why don't you sleep at home? Do you have parents, or are you an orphan?" After the last question, the girl felt that it might sound too harsh and hurt the child. But Jenna's reaction said otherwise. It was scary at first, but now it's not scary anymore. "I'm used to it. Sometimes Rex comes to me at night. He's my dog that my mom lets out when I sleep here. He doesn't scare me at all. And when I sleep alone, I just play before I go to sleep. And then I'm not scared either. Tonight I will sleep here, so I took my favorite toy with me." The girl held out a small doll with blue hair for Camille to look at. "How come Mommy let you come here alone? Aren't you supposed to sleep at home?" "I can't sleep at home. When Uncle comes to visit," said the girl in a completely calm voice. "When Uncle comes only in the afternoon, I play here, and then I go home in the evening. And then I sleep with my mother. And when my uncle stays with us at night, I can't stay there because he doesn't know about me yet. My mom really wants to marry my uncle, but if he finds out about me, he'll leave, like all uncles used to do. So she and I agreed that she will tell my uncle about me after the wedding. In the meantime, we'll play spies, and I'll hide from my uncle so he won't find out about me before time. And then we'll be fine, and I'll have a daddy. I even like playing like that. I'm helping my mom to be happy." The girl said all this with sincere joy. She believed that her mom would really get married soon and tell about the baby. But Camille had little faith in this. She couldn't believe that such a thing could happen, that a small child could spend the night all alone in an abandoned house. spend almost every day of her life here without going to daycare, and yet her mother reacts calmly to all this. Moreover, she herself sends the girl to this place, knowing perfectly well how dangerous it can be for a child. Camille looked at the girl who was indifferently playing with her dolls for a few more minutes. She was engrossed only in them, and she did not care at all that she was in the basement of an old house, that her mother was abandoning her for a strange man. And at this moment, the girl realized that the only one who really has no choice, who cannot change her life on her own and make balanced and responsible decisions, this is a little girl who involuntarily has to lose her childhood, happy moments, and grow up with serious psychological traumas. And she is an adult and independent person, can change her life without much trouble, can give up everything that does not suit her, and she can also save a little person who does not yet understand the seriousness of her problems and cannot do anything on her own. Do you want to? Stay with me while your mom marries your uncle, and then you'll definitely come back to her. We'll play and watch cartoons together, and we'll buy you a new doll that you won't be afraid to sleep with. Would you like that, Camille? She hoped for a positive answer and tried to make sure that the girl did not guess anything and just accepted her invitation to live together. Jenna hesitated for a few seconds. Then she nodded her head and gave her hand to Camille. The only thing she mouthed was, "You just need to tell my mom I'll be at your place, so she knows where to pick me up from later when she marries my uncle. And I'll tell her myself." "All right. 'Cause we're in a big hurry right now." "Yes, all right. Just don't forget to tell her not to worry about me. Otherwise she'll worry that I'm gone for so long." The girl sincerely believed that her mother was really worried about her and would definitely take her back after she had settled her own family life. Camille did not believe that and was determined to get custody of the little girl in order to give her a better future. The first thing she did was go to the juvenile detention center. She described the whole situation, except that the girl was sent to the basement by her own mother. Camille simply told about the fact that she met a homeless girl with no papers or anything else, which she did, and said that she was living in the basement of an abandoned house and that she didn't know anything about her parents, only that her mom would take her away after she married some uncle. The story was very convincing. Despite the fact that the girl did not have her own home and stable job, she was promised custody of the girl, but only if she provided all the conditions for the child to live. Camille was warned about inspections and that at any moment she could be deprived of the guardianship status if the child's living arrangements did not meet all the requirements. Little Jenna stayed at the center until the evening, while Camille went to deal with the many problems that had accumulated in her own life. The first thing she did was to pick up her papers from the university. After all, she was going to work to provide for her baby girl, and so there was no opportunity to get a full-fledged education. In the future, if the opportunity arises, she will definitely go to courses in her chosen specialty. But for now, she should think not about herself, but about another little person who could not solve her problems on her own. After that, she went to the registry office and filed an application for the dissolution of the marriage. She refused to be present during the call of her almost ex-husband, and therefore immediately went to her parents to tell about everything that had happened and that soon there would be an addition to their family. Camille was worried that her father might get angry because of the situation. But surprisingly, the conversation was as calm as possible. Moreover, the man supported his daughter in the decisions made and promised to help in the upbringing of the little girl. Emily agreed to study with little Jenna and take her to kindergarten to look after her while her daughter would be at work. Camille was genuinely pleased with this response. Tears even came to her eyes, which she quickly waved away and headed off to pick up the baby girl. By the end of the day, all the paperwork was done. Of course, not without the financial support of the organization. But it was not so important for Camille. The most important thing was that she had made not only an important decision in her life, but also in Jenna's life, who would now grow up in a loving family that would treat her as a relative, not as a thing that could be gotten rid of at any moment. Despite Camille's misgivings, John signed the dissolution of marriage document without a court hearing. He never even once went to her home to address the situation and apologize. After receiving the document dissolving their union, Camille's life became much easier and more peaceful. She realized that now she could do whatever she wanted. She could go home without worrying about her own safety. Of course, her desired education had to be postponed, but that was not the cause of anxiety and worry. A few days after the girl took the documents, she was offered to simply transfer to the correspondence basis, and she gladly agreed. It didn't come true. And so did another of the girl's fears. Christopher continued to work successfully with her father, pretending that there was simply no conflict between his son and Camille. Moreover, John continued to treat Stephen with the same respect and showed due respect as a manager and always considered his opinion. As a result, after only a year, Camille's father's company made money, and therefore he was able to quit Christopher's company and run his own business. Although Stephen had to pay a certain percentage to the Christopher family for the duration of the company's operation, such payments were hardly felt at all. As a result, the family's welfare became much better. And in her third year, Camille was able to switch to full-time study in order not to miss important practice, which is of great importance in her profession. Little Jenna grew up in love and care. At first, the little girl would often ask about when her mom was coming to take her home. How is her relationship with her new uncle? But soon the questioning stopped. Of course, no one ever came for the little girl, and the police did not receive a single missing child report. Most likely, the woman was even glad that she was able to get rid of her daughter, who interfered with her personal happiness. But Camille judged Camille solely from her own perspective. Jenna began to see Camille as her mother. A few times from the guardianship authorities did come with checks, and each time the results were satisfactory. Soon the inspections stopped altogether, and therefore the girl had nothing to remind her that she was growing up as a foster child. This is how life can turn 180 degrees, and a desperate situation can seem like a small thing that can be solved in just one day. And a sudden meeting can not only change a life, but even save it. After all, who knows what could have happened to little Jenna if she had continued to live in the basement of a dilapidated old house.